With the Committee of the Whole to order for Monday, November 25th. Welcome to everyone in our gallery this morning. Our first order of business this morning is our delegations, and our first delegation this morning is Ken Reitsma, Dawson Creek firefighter, who we're going to present the Fire Service's Exemplary Service Medal presentation. All right. Look at him rushing up here. Morning, Ken. Welcome. Come on up. So it's my pleasure to present this morning to Ken. A first bar to the Fire Service's Exemplary Service Medal is awarded to Kenneth Reitsma in recognition of 30 years of loyal and exemplary service to public safety in Canada. Obviously, 30 years, he doesn't even look 30, right? And yeah, but look at him. Look how old he is. Anyway, it's a real pleasure to be able to do this today and recognize the service of our firefighters in our community. And it's one of those core pieces that we really value, obviously, and keeping our community and our residents safe. So, Ken, it's a pleasure to be able to do this. Thank you for 30 years of service, and we, on behalf of the citizens of Dawson Creek, sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you.
Do you want to say a few words or anything? Oh, good. Our next delegation this morning, 2.2, we have Lindsay Borick and Barry Raynard from Tourism Dawson Creek in attendance to give us a update on World Junior A Challenge. Good morning. Oh, and Dustin's here as well. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. So, obviously most of you know us, but I'm Lindsay with Event Tourism. This is Barry and Dustin. So, we're here today to update you on the World Junior A Hockey Challenge and kind of where we're at and some cool opportunities that we have from your council.
All right. Thank you very much, Lindsay, and obviously the countdown is on. We're days away from welcoming the world to Dawson Creek and the Peace region. And with that, there's 12 directors that have been part of our host committee for the last number of months on putting in a lot of time and assistance in a lot of event logistics. So we'd like to thank them. But then also, as of Friday, we had 105 community volunteers step up to the plate, which is absolutely amazing. And
great job.
These types of events, we couldn't do it without the community backing and all these volunteers stepping up. Our team at the event center is primed and ready. We're going to be doing the quadruple flip that we call it over the next number of days as we roll into PBR, to hockey, into Johnny Region, and back into hockey. So the building will definitely see its workout over the next couple of days, but that's what makes all of this really exciting to be a part of. I'm now going to pass it over to Barry, who's going to really talk about how we're taking this event into the community and into the region.
So thank you, Dustin, and good to be back again amongst friends. Some friends. I'm changing friends too. No, I can stand, Liz. That's okay. So very excited to tell you today that we've been able to continue to grow what we believe is our sport tourism model, including community. The Russians arrive this Saturday, and they'll be going to Tumbler Ridge to train. They're very excited in Tumbler. They're doing some really exciting things with the Tumbler community. They're doing a dinner in the community with the mayor and council and friends of the delegations. We also have a number of photo opportunities, so they kind of displace minor hockey and the figure skating. So they're doing team photos with the team, which is really exciting. With that, they will be one of the 7 schools that we're in a partnership with BC Hockey to deliver floorball into the programs under the Ministry of Health and Education. And I'm very excited about Tumbler. The checks arrived. They're going to our partnership with Grand Prairie. As we all know, we're working on a partnership to deliver a package to Hockey Canada around the World Juniors next year. And we have to have that Alberta connection, which is very positive and very encouraging for us. So the checks will be staying in Grand Prairie for 3 days and coming home to us after that exhibition game. The partnership with the 5 schools, we've been able to go into Karen Gooding district for the first time in Brad Sperling. They're very excited to take the floorball into the rural communities. We have Tumbler, and then we're going to Westmount and Sotu are doing a joint First Nation Indigenous opportunity, which is very exciting for BC Hockey. We'll also be doing the Chapman Elementary School. Then we come into Dawson Creek and we're doing Tremblay and Ecole Ross, Frank Ross, which will combine out to over $5,000 worth of equipment left in the schools. So very exciting around that partnership as well. One of the key initiatives that we're very excited about is the partnership with the ARC. We're going up into the ARC. We're crossing our fingers that we can actually make ice. Hard to believe we're still not able to make ice in December, but we're planning I guess you could call it a pond hockey night with kids, and really looking at those kids that don't get those opportunities to be inclusive all the time in our programming. So we're going to do a partnership with Boston Pizza and Tim Hortons to deliver some goods up that way. We're also looking to encourage a couple councillors maybe to be part of the discussion to looks at growing the game. We bought the Trent Lindbergh through Swamp Donkey bought that little ice hockey rink. So we're looking at putting together free play or fun play, unstructured play, do a workshop with the ARC, and really focus in on our next project, which is female hockey, and looking how to grow the game for female opportunities in the region. So we're very excited about that, and BC Hockey will wrap up the next morning working with our new Hockey Canada term of U8 kids, Learn to Play kids, our IP kids and our novice kids will be doing some development. And we believe we're going to put up into over 100 tickets into the community for the ARC, for the kids and families up that way, and minor hockey young kids as well. So on the development side, we're very excited about that, but more so how we've gone into the region. I think it's really cool. Neighboring across, the borders that open up and make it all inclusive for our neighbors for sure. With that, we have 4 buses coming in from different communities for games during the week, which is really cool. Anyways?
Awesome. Okay, thanks, Barry. So obviously with this event, like Dustin said, we couldn't do it without our volunteers, which is pretty huge for us that we've actually been able to track it. We've always had a great number of volunteers in our community, but with Hockey Canada's platform this year, we were able to track all of our volunteers, which is right now at 105, and today is our last day for volunteer registration, so that'll probably go up by a little bit. So obviously with these opportunities, we couldn't do it without Mayor and Council's direction and guidance and vision, and so for that we want to thank you guys, because it's super exciting that we get to host the World again in just 11 days. But also with that, we have awesome opportunities that we'd love Mayor and Council to be a part of. Everything from the opening ceremonies, meeting and greeting the teams. We have over 100 scouts coming from all different types of NHL teams to our community. So there's opportunity to meet them. We have a scout night at each one of our restaurants. I think over 5 nights, 5 restaurants have stepped up to host just those scouts after the game, which is super exciting. And then we also have, obviously, our fans, interacting with our fans. We have Shaylee, who's always taken part in our events as our fanster, and we have that opportunity as well. And then we also have our BC Hockey Development, which is huge, too, throughout our region, and then locally as well. So I think today we just wanted to come and tell you guys and give you an update on our event and what's happening. And we will provide those opportunities to you and get them out to you. So if you guys are interested, you guys can come back to us, because we'd love to have our elected officials take part in our event, obviously, and help us to welcome the world.
Okay, and the last up to that, BC Hockey, or through BC Destination Tourism, we will be the first selected within the province of BC to do a sport tourism video. And we've developed a theme around the events that we've hosted, but the family that they're focusing on is the Henderson family. And his family will be part of that video, and how they gave up their home back in 2010 for the Olympics, and how Hudson and Kevin have been part, and their families have been part of that ability to grow. So that's going to be pretty cool for them to come in. That's marketing that it's paid for marketing that is going to be all over the province and through Destination Canada as well. So we're very excited, as well as 3 other videos they're doing. And finally, we've nominated Mr. Powell for an ambassador award through Hockey Canada. We'll learn that early next week, and that will be he apparently says he's leaving us, but a good way to send off a volunteer, and thankful for he's chaired 4 of those events, and we're very thankful for him. Okay.
That's awesome. Okay. Thank you, guys. So obviously the work that is going on to this for a community to host the World is pretty unique, and I think this is at least 3 or 4 that we've been able to do just in the hockey alone. So great job, really appreciate it. I love the thing about us now and this reaching out exhibition game going to Chetwynd with the USA Canada, Fort St. John, Grand Prairie, the Russian team doing their training camp in Tumbler Ridge. That core funding we get through the Peace River Regional District of $100,000 a year has been really critical, and I think this is a great message for us in terms of how we can demonstrate the relationship with our region and building the regional profile to these events. So great job, you guys. Council, any questions, comments?
You know, just a thank you. I mean, these are the kids that are going to be the future NHL stars, and encourage everybody to take the chance to get out there and see them, because many of them will, I'm sure, play for the Boston Bruins and win a Stanley Cup or two. Just thought I'd throw that in there.
Now I got to say something.
To give context to the level of play, so if you remember, we hosted under 17s, 3 Canadian teams. That becomes the one team for the under 18 Ivan Holinka Gretzky tournament that happened in Edmonton last year. This team from Russia is the same exact team that won that event, except for the goalie, who should be the #1 draft pick this year. So
Wow.
level of play should be very good.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Oh, Shaylee, you need to say something?
Oh, sorry, Shayla.
Yeah, the Boston thing. It's all right. A therapy will do. But what I do want to mention is it's really great to see the regional aspect, and just knowing from past events, the effect on the children from the different communities having those opportunities is unbelievable, and it's something they never forget. And I think that's the greatest legacy that always gets left, is what happens to the youth in our community and the aspiration that they get out of it.
As a politician, I can't leave the room without telling one very short. We're going to do the 10-year legacy, but I think one of the councillor's granddaughters is currently playing at a college, and I believe it was almost 2 weeks ago, had our own time to tour some of our local girls that went down. Not only that, but I think drove several kilometers the next day to give them a pep talk. So I think there's outcomes that we need to measure that sometimes we don't see right away. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you, guys. Our next delegation this morning, 2.3, we have Rob Ringma, Aaron Thompson, and Lindsay Taylor from BC Transit are in attendance to give an update on our BC Transit options. Good morning. Welcome. Welcome back.
Glad to be here. Just get fired up. There we go. Yeah, once again, Rob Ringma, Manager of Government Relations, BC Transit for Northern BC, Aaron Thompson, Planner at BC Transit. And you see on your delegation list, Lindsay Taylor, who's in the back row there. Lindsay will actually be replacing me in my role in the north. I'm not leaving BC Transit, but I'm just moving down to the south coast, Fraser Valley and Whistler. So going to miss the north, but definitely wanted to make sure I came up and was here for this council presentation, and here for any information or questions that you guys may have, because it's obviously very important, the topic that we have to discuss today. Today's presentation, very similar to what you saw last time we were here. We did go away from the last meeting with, I think, even clearer direction from council that we wanted to look for some further reductions to get to the target that was set out by council of $350,000 local share, which of course is going to represent about a 56% reduction to your total budget. So we did go back. We kind of sharpened the pencil. Aaron did a little bit more work, and we do have a 6th option to present that does get us to that $350,000. And I just thought today would be a good opportunity just to kind of walk through those options again, refresh your memory, because I know in the report section, staff will be bringing for discussion some options moving forward. So go through that. Again, system overview. Actually, the Dawson Creek Transit Service started in 1981, so it's been a fairly long established transit system. It has kind of risen and fallen with the different economic conditions that have taken place through the community over the years. But currently, as it exists, we have 3 different routes, 9,000 service hours, 6 days a week. And your net local contribution currently is $626,000. So again, that request for a reduction of 55% gets us to around $350,000. If we look at the system overview, we are seeing a little bit of growth in the transit system in terms of total passengers and revenue. Obviously, those are correlated, but also the costs have risen in correlation as the hours have gone up, and of course with just the rising cost of everything from fuel to lease fees and transportation cost. A couple things of note, what's not in our presentation today but should be for consideration down the road once council comes to a decision on transit is, and I think I mentioned this last time, was to conduct a fare review. So actually, if we want to kind of improve the revenue line, there is an opportunity for us to conduct a fare review, look at the current fares, current monthly passes, and current fares, and look for opportunities to increase revenue. Again, that's not in this presentation. In this presentation, we're really walking through different service reduction options, but that is something that I think once that decision's made, I would definitely table to see what we can do from a revenue perspective. And really, the options that are going to be presented today, you know, they really protect the core travel times, the times when we see most of the ridership, and that also generates most of the revenue that the system's also experiencing. So if we took away from some of those core travel times, of course, total revenue is going to decrease along with the decrease in ridership that would be expected. And lastly, your transit system is funded through the BC Transit Act and our cost share model to about 47% by BC Transit. So of course, any reductions in your transit service will basically relate to reductions in the subsidies that you're currently getting from BC Transit in that through the BC Transit Act. So I'll turn it over to Aaron and let him just walk you through the options, the 5 options that we presented last time, as well as that 6th kind of revised option.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'll kind of quickly go through the first 5 options that we went over last time. So option 1 would be maintain the status quo. So that's the existing service with no changes. Option 2 is looking at reducing the frequency on Saturdays, discontinuing weekend service between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m., and reducing service frequency on weekday middays. Option 3 reduces service frequency on all service days. Option 4 reduces service frequency on weekdays and discontinues all Saturday service. Option 5 discontinues the Route 3 Central, discontinues all Saturday service on all routes, reduces the service hours to 17 hours daily, split between the morning peak hours and afternoon peak hours, creating a midday gap, and removing 1 bus from the Dawson Creek fleet. So getting into option 6, this is the new option that we worked on. It is very similar to the option 5, except for really it just has even further reduced annual hours. So it still involves reducing the Route 3 Central, still discontinues all Saturday service on all routes. It reduces the weekday service to about 13 1/3 hours, and that's from the current 31 hours daily, and that would be split between the morning peak and the afternoon peak, creating a midday service gap of a few hours. And removing 1 bus from the Dawson Creek Transit fleet. This also would involve realigning a portion of the Route 2 to address some of the coverage issues with removing the Route 3. And then that's getting us to essentially a budget of about estimated budget of 348,000 net municipal share. And we're looking at it's reducing it by 5,800 hours. So it's quite a big service reduction, and it's estimated at about 64% reduction in ridership and 61% reduction in revenue. And this is a map just kind of showing where that potential route realignment of the Route 2 is. You can see here, this section here, kind of just in front of City Hall, would be removed on the majority of trips, and then there'd be routing up to Dave's No Frills and along Alaska Highway, tying back in, and that's essentially time agnostic and wouldn't result in any real trip time increase or budget increase, but it would allow for that coverage that would be lost with removing the Route 3. So with this, again, we're There would be impacts to our customer base. Because, looking at increasing likely any of these reductions would increase transportation costs for transit users as they have to find other methods of transportation, be it private automobile, taxis, or another service of some sort. There's also reduced opportunities for transit riders. That includes economic opportunities such as getting to jobs and work, educational opportunities, going to school, both secondary, post-secondary, recreational and medical opportunities as well that would be impacted by removing transit. And there would be reduced access to bus stops, as a lot of them would be further afield. So people may have to walk further to get to the transit service than they currently do. And non-choice or non-discretionary users, such as youth, seniors, low-income people who are reliant on transit to get around, would be disproportionately affected by the service reduction. So here's just a chart comparing all the different options. Essentially going from top to the bottom, you see a further reduction in service hours and a further reduction in budget as we go from options 1 through 6.
Yeah, sorry, the only comment I want to make there is Aaron had talked a little bit about a reduction in ridership and revenue. Mm-hmm. So those are calculated in your net municipal share there. So we've actually decreased the cost, but also decreased the projected revenues. So just so you know that those are our best estimate of what your net municipal share total after revenue's been taken off would be.
And that may also just be a good opportunity to kind of explain that. Especially when I was talking about with option 6, we're getting to a high reduction in ridership and revenue, but we're not seeing quite as much reduction in costs. It's because those base fixed costs create essentially a basement in which reduces the efficiency of reductions. And so as any kind of further reductions would also just further decrease that efficiency, and you'd be losing more service for the amount of budget you would save.
Yeah, sure. So I think we've covered off quite a bit of this. Revenue and ridership projections are based on linear decrease, which may not be the case. Again, these are all projections and estimates. We're fairly good at it, but they're always open to any of those kind of discretionary pieces. We had recommended, and we still stay with our recommendations, that if reductions to the transit system are selected, that we recommend implementation in June of 2020. The reason for that is that because a lot of the impact will happen to school-age passengers, that if we make the reductions in June, it'll give us 2 months for us to communicate what that new schedule looks like, as well as get that new schedule into service prior to a September start. We also need a bit of time, of course, to redo all of our schedules, riders guides, and there's some logistical pieces, of course, our contract with the local operating company that all need to be considered. We most likely could, at the earliest, implement changes for April 2020, but our recommendation would be to do the due diligence, make sure we communicate thoroughly with the community and implement for June of 2020. And Aaron mentioned the fixed cost challenge that we have. We can only reduce the transit service by a certain point because of our fixed costs in terms of facility, supervisors, and of course lease fees. We've taken one vehicle out, but there is no such thing as a one bus transit system, because if that bus breaks down, you need a second bus to press into service. We kind of hit a basement there where we can only get our fixed costs down to a certain percentage. I would open it up for questions. I know it's it's a well-discussed topic. I don't know if there's anything else that's come up in the last month and a bit since we presented. Again, I know staff is presenting a full report on the motion that you presented last time.
Great. Thank you, Rob. Aaron, thank you. Questions for Council? Councillor Earl and Councillor Lexi.
Thank you, Your Worship. So first of all, thank you guys for coming back again, and welcome, Lindsay. I look forward to working with you. And Rob, we haven't known each other that long. I've only been on here for a year, but it's been a pleasure. I appreciate the amount of work you put into this, given the nature of your job this can't be the most pleasant subject to come and discuss with the council, so.
I wasn't gonna leave Lindsay hanging on this one.
No, fair enough. But thank you, I appreciate professionalism, and Aaron, similarly. So just a quick follow-up on the considerations, public engagement. Certainly that's been something we've been trying to do as we've worked our way through this process. Does BC Transit have an idea of what that looks like on your, is it going to require some collaboration with city staff? Is it something that we're going to kind of be doing on our own as an entity, or is it something you're going to want to collaborate on with us so that we can, depending on the messaging?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor, for the question. So when we talk about engagement, again, if council makes a decision today on an option or direction they want to go, it kind of moves from engagement to more of a communication strategy, and making sure that all the transit users that are utilizing the system are well informed of the changes, of what the new schedule would look like and what the impacts may be to them. In terms of, engagement, if council so chose to want to go out to public engagement with some of these options to get some feedback from public, we would absolutely assist in that process and do our best to facilitate that. My understanding is that the fiscal challenges that you're under make for a fairly condensed timeline, which kind of brings us why we're here today. But that is an option for council if they so chose.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Electra?
All right, thanks, Your Worship. Thanks for the presentation. Never an easy subject when you have to look at making alterations. Your considerations, the slide last, you put revenue and ridership projections are based on a linear decrease. Did you have the opportunity, as I understand our scheduling, most of our, or a good chunk of our ridership is students, morning, afternoon. I think our scheduling, if option 6 was the one that's entertained here, would maintain those early morning, afternoon rides. So was there any look at those or did you have the opportunity to say, hey, look, what's our ridership between 7:30 and 9 and between 2:30 and 4 to see, because my gut tells me that linear decrease, we're probably going to have less of a decrease in ridership just because of that phenomenon in our city.
We budget very conservatively for exactly that reason, councillors. So what I would say is, again, we did take a linear decrease. So exactly to your point, we know our 2 large ridership periods, and it's students as well as anybody who's commuting or coming in and out of town, would be those 2 kind of peak morning afternoon periods. So what I would say is the net benefit to council is that if our revenue projections were too conservative, that'll actually add revenue, and of course the city maintains 100% of the revenue that's collected, so it would just actually decrease your total cost of the system. So it's a positive if we have been conservative in our budgeting.
All right, that was the only question.
Thank you. Further questions? So obviously, we sincerely appreciate the work that you guys, BC Transit, have done on our behalf to give us some options in regards to a service, and as been discussed, nobody comes into this room usually to say stop doing something, and so it really is one of those things that you look at as municipal government and say, sometimes you got to look at the service you're providing, or I still provide value to your residents, and that's what this is underway for us. So we really appreciate it. Obviously, the work you guys have done. Information is valuable, and that's what we need to make good decisions, is good information. So we sincerely appreciate the work you guys have done and put into this. So thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks for being here again today.
Thank you.
Good luck.
2.4 this morning, we have Jillian Obi-Vines from PINA Sustainability Incorporated give us an update on their regional climate projections report for the city of Dawson Creek and area. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Do you mind if I have?
No, absolutely.
Thank you. You'll see in the front cover there's a one-page kind of overview, so you can follow along easily. Flipping so much. Oh, I'm short. Now mine will not share.
Go ahead and just,
No.
we'll sort it out later. Go ahead and you can, yeah.
Is it sharing?
You can steal my copy after.
You. There you go.
Thank you.
That. And great, thank you. pleasure to be here today. Thank you very much. I feel very lucky to come and share this personally with you. It's work that we've been doing for some time. I'll just get right into it. So this is a presentation as part of a larger group. My colleague will be presenting on the second piece of this, which is what does this mean, but I'm here to give you the data on the projections for the Northeast.
You're good to sit if you like. If
I'm
that's more
actually going to
comfortable.
walk up there.
Okay.
All right.
Dance around a little bit. I'm not
Well, the problem, so the issue is we're recorded, and so we need you by the mic is
okay,
why.
I'll sit by the mic,
Yeah.
and I'll see if there is a...
There should be a pointer on there.
There we go. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're here today to talk about changes that we're seeing in our climate, and I understand from conversations that we've already started to see a lot of changes locally. And I'll start with this slide here, where this is talking about future temperature in British Columbia, and you'll see right off the bat this zip, zap, up and down line we have, which is variability. We all know that year to year we experience differences in our weather and in our climate, and I just wanted to put this slide up today to talk about that. Over time, this variability up and down, peaks and valleys, is going to continue no matter which trajectory that we're on in terms of our changing climate. You see here there are three trajectories. We have this red trajectory, which is sort of the business as usual. If our economy continues or our emissions continue as projected, this is the red line is sort of business as usual, and that very natural variability up and down will continue as we go over time. The blue line here is if we are going to work hard on GHG emissions reductions towards 1.5 degrees by 2030, you'll see that is also still changing. The variability is right in there. And the numbers we'll be sharing today are not the variability numbers, but that nice smooth line. And we're going to be sharing the red line numbers today if there's not significant action to reduce GHGs globally. Some key messages from the work that we've done is really around precipitation. We're going to see increased precipitation in all seasons. So right now, summer is where we have the most precipitation, and we'll continue to see high summer precipitation in the future, though the precipitation in August and in autumn and spring will increase at a greater rate. So autumn and spring will continue to become more wet, though summer will remain the wettest by a smaller margin. And we'll see more extreme storms and events in the future. So when it rains, it'll rain harder. When there's precipitation, it'll come more at once with potentially longer dry spells in between. Here's an image for you, and these are all outlined in more detail in your report, but the image really shows here this wettest days, so the amount of rain that's falling on the wettest days. In the past, we've had about 50 millimeters, in the past being a time period based on historical measurements between 1971 and 2000, so the average rain that would fall on the wettest days, the wettest 5 days of the year, is about 50 millimeters. In the future, which is around the 2050s, we can see that it's projected that will increase by about 17% in autumn months, which we're looking at here. And there's a range to that. So we think about that variability, the high and low, that could only be 7%, but it could go up to 30% of that rain that's falling on those heavy days. So that really speaks to the storms will be stormier. That's by the 2050s. You can see Dawson Creek there on the temperature-related key messages to share from the report. Summers will be considerably warmer. We're looking at higher temperatures across the summer. By the 2080s, summers in Dawson Creek could be projected to be similar to those of Kelowna in the past. So the historical averages that we've seen in Kelowna in the 80s to 2000s, we can expect those kind of temperatures in terms of summer here in the region. So that's noteworthy. That's a noteworthy change that's important to think about. Winter temperatures also are projected to warm over time, and we'll show you this picture as well. So you can see here that days above 25 degrees. 25 degrees is a warm day, and in the region, in the lower areas of the valley, so you can see the valleys particularly. In the past, we've had about 16 days on average, so there could be more, there could be less, but on average across the region, historically in those lower areas, we've seen about 16 days of 25 degrees and above. In the future, that's by 2050s, we can expect about 40 And then by the late century, so around the 2080s, if we're on that red trajectory, that business as usual, we'll be looking at around 60 days over 25 degrees. So that's a significant change for the region. This is stream flow. I wanted to show you some stream flow because I know that, of course, water resources are important. I'm going to walk you through this slightly complicated slide. So here we have, let me find my little pointer here. Here we have historical, this black line is the historical slope of the stream flow that we have in the help me if I'm saying that. Kiskatna River, thank you very much. And so we can see over time, so by the 2050s, we're going to this darker blue line. I'm a little shaky this morning here. This darker green line rather, and then by the 2020, well, I'll show you the 2050s. We see that darker green line, and again, that light green is the band, is the level of variability that we can expect. Moving ahead, we see in this by the middle of the century that we're seeing an earlier peak on average, though it can be higher or lower because of the, that's the variability that we see. But there's that lower peak we're going to be seeing of when the stream flow is. Higher winter flows, which I understand you're seeing this year, and also lower summer flows. So you see that green line dipping below the black line over time in the future. In terms of what this means towards the end of the century, so hydrology is modeled at different time frames, so we'll say the 2070s rather than the 2080s, and I'll leave the gory details out of it. We're seeing winter stream flow increasing by 350%, so that's that big back, the big back of the, here we go, pointer. The big back, that's the winter stream flow going up, and again, that variation. And summer decreasing by 45%, so quite low flows in the summer. This is quite a change to the hydrology that we'll see through the region, and the impacts, of course, to the city that Erica will speak about next. One thing to mention here is snowpack will change as well. We looked into snowpack, and we're looking at in this watershed 80% less by the end of the century in the April 1st snowpack, and about 90% less by the May 1st snowpack by the end of the century. So it's significant changes in our hydrological system. Now I have this table kind of summarizing a lot of those maps and points I'll just put out there, and I'll leave it up on the board. If you have any questions, I thought I'd leave this for you. I won't go through this in detail, but it's all in the report if you want more information, and Your Worship, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you. Council? One of the things that always seems interesting to me as somebody who was born and raised in Dawson Creek and lived here my entire life, with the development of the Williston Reservoir, and you have this immense now body of water to the west of us, and they always say your prevailing winds dictate and impact winds and moisture and all that. Is that a factor within the analogy of the science to be able to baseline that and say prior to that huge reservoir, and it's a huge reservoir, to be able to indicate what types of atmospheric impacts that has, which would then impact potentially our moisture, winds, temperatures, things like that?
That's a great question. Thank you for that question. So I work very closely with a climate scientist from the Pacific Climate Impact Consortium, who's not here today. Though he would report, I would turn this question to Trevor, who would give you the details on all the modeling. So the projections, the numbers here are projections based on an ensemble of 12 climate models, downscaled, which means they take these global models and they bring it down to, I think it's 800 meter blocks, and then we start to look at some of it. So I don't know the answer to that question, but I do know that the smallest geographic area that we're localizing is 800 meters. And I can find that out for you, and we can respond back via email, but I don't know the specifics of that.
Thank you. Councillor Javeco?
So on the first slide there, where you've got the three lines, the red line is going a lot warmer.
Yes.
And the blue line is kind of staying down.
Yes.
Looks like it's sort of a reasonable approach, hopefully. How how is that impacted, or who impacts it? Do we have control of that locally, or how big of an area do you look at, I guess globally,
Right.
that is going to affect that, or how do we control it?
Right.
Do we control it here? We've got 70,000 people in Northeast BC. Can we control that?
Right. Thank you for that question. Again, a great question. I'll give you a little bit more information about this slide to answer that question, and then we'll get into more specifically. So the red line that we see is something called the concentration pathway. So how much GHGs are emitted globally, to your point. So how much locally? It's, well, we are a very small percentage of global emissions locally, our residents here. So not a lot in terms of direct, but that red line is business as usual, global economy was where we're going. And the blue line, just to your point of it looks like the best scenario, the blue line would involve considerable GHG reductions now, and then starting to sequester carbon from the atmosphere as well to get to the commitment of 1.0 degrees change by 2030. So that is a very aggressive target in terms of GHG emissions to get there. And you'll see that even in that scenario, the bottom of the blue is warmer than anything we've experienced in history. So the coldest day of the future with that aggressive GHG emissions globally is warmer than anything we've felt in the past. So it is, it's the best scenario, but it is still a big change, which will be important as decision makers locally, because what you do have an impact on locally is how you prepare for these changes. So these are coming. We have a role to play in mitigation. However, the real business of running a city that you're involved in is about how do we prepare for these changes coming, and the work that my colleague has done has worked with your community and others in the region looking at what does this mean for our regional systems, our municipal systems, our infrastructure, our people, our economy, all of these sorts of things, and what can we do, because to your point, Councillor, where you do have agency or ability to act is in how you prepare your communities for the changes that you have a role, but not as large of a role as you do in your own local infrastructure. Thank you for that. Other questions?
Thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for having me.
And next up, we have Erica Crawford from Shift Collaborative in attendance to update on the Vulnerability Summit report. Good morning, Erica. Welcome.
Good morning. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. Is this on? All right. So I'm Erica Crawford. I'm from Shift Collaborative, and I'm going to share with you a little bit of what we've been doing on the Northeast Climate Vulnerability Assessment, which is a project of the Fraser Basin Council. Thank you. And I'll just do a little bit of introduction and then give you a bit of background on the project overall, which Jillian's work is part of as well, and then fill you in just at a high level, and I'm happy to take questions about what we did on the vulnerability and risk assessment and what came out of that. So what we're talking about today, distinguishing between climate change mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation is, as Jillian was just speaking of, reducing our emissions and greenhouse gas emissions, and adaptation is what do we do about the impacts of climate change. So the changes that we're seeing and are going to see more of, what can we do about that? So that's what this project was really about. And as we see the changes in climate progressing, we also see that the severity of impacts is progressing across a whole range of different parts of the system. So this is just showing all sorts of human and natural systems that are affected by climate change, and that darkening color is showing the severity of impact. So globally, we know that that the impact is increasing, and we don't need global studies to tell us that, because it's happening here, and we're experiencing that. So here, of course, the flooding that you've experienced over the last decade, 2016 in particular, the severity of that, and the deep impacts to the community, and also we've been, of course, seeing more wildfires and more severity of impacts. And although that hasn't come to the community directly, obviously the impacts of wildfire smoke are affecting everyone, and also other communities who are evacuated, and the impact that that then has regionally and on the response. So we're seeing that locally. And it's also costing us. So when we look globally, we see that the cost of these types of events has been going up dramatically over the last number of years. And in Canada, the Insurance Bureau of Canada reported that from 1983 to 2008, the average payouts for these types of events was on the magnitude of $400 million a year. And then from 2008 to 2017, it was $1.8 billion a year. So the costs are going up dramatically. Flood is a huge part of that. And it's kind of common sense. We all know that, you know, a dollar spent proactively can save you down the line. But we're also, we have more assessments coming out lately that are showing that that money spent up front to prepare and to adapt to those changes it does pay off. So there's an efficiency to investing in mitigating these risks up front as opposed to paying for the damages down the line, which you have some experience with. So that's all the background to why this project. And so this project is the Northeast Climate Risk Project. As I mentioned, it's a project of the Fraser Basin Council in partnership with 6 member municipalities in this region. So Dawson Creek is one, Fort St. John, Northern Rockies Regional Municipality, Tumbler, Chetwynd, Puskupi. And so these municipalities, we've done the same work for each of those municipalities. And the purpose of this project is to support those local government partners in preparing and understanding what these risks and vulnerabilities would be and what can be done about them, and to come together at a regional scale as well so that there's some efficiencies around learning and also the actions that can be taken as a result of this information that's now being generated, and also increasing awareness amongst other stakeholders that are all a part of this, because it's not only local government, of course, it's all sectors who are affected and have a role in this. So this project had 3 main deliverables, and we're just coming up to the end of it. It started in January 2018, and we're wrapping up in the next couple of months. And the network itself was one of those big deliverables. So the 6 municipalities, together with academic and provincial government partners who have been working on this together, and the Regional Climate Projections Report, which you just heard about from Gillian. And the part that I'll share a little bit more about now is the Community Vulnerability Assessment. So we did one for Dawson Creek and then one for each of the other municipalities as well. And that began with the climate projections that you just heard about, so taking that as the starting place. And the first step in the project was to do a gap analysis. So we were looking at existing programs, policies, plans, material that was on the website, did some interviews, and looked at what would be the vulnerabilities to the service areas in this community, particularly what could be impacted, what action was already being taken that might address this, and where were some opportunities to bring a climate lens to enhance what you're doing already. And then from that work, we identified a list of about 50 potential impacts to service areas in the community, and then brought that to a multi-stakeholder group who conducted a vulnerability and risk assessment of those impacts, vetted the impacts, and then did some assessment. And then in order to operationalize this, we also generated ideas of both existing actions that are already addressing these things and some other ideas for directions that could be taken so that we can translate the risk into what could be done about that as well. So just quickly, that multi-stakeholder group gave us some feedback. There was concern about a wide range of the different types of climate changes that we can expect, and also concern across various departments. This does touch really everything in some way. More concern about more of the hard infrastructure areas and hazard management, less concern, but perhaps also just less certainty about how things would be impacted in the less hard infrastructure-oriented service areas. So in that gap analysis, as I mentioned, we identified where some of the vulnerabilities would be, but also some of the good work that is already going on and the strengths that can be built on. So here in Dawson Creek, a big strength for sure is the degree of understanding and information available about your water supply and watershed health. So that's a really great starting place for being able to manage that going into the future. That's a big concern. The existing sanitary sewer and drainage master plans also have done some good review work work over the last years and have good directions there for enhancing the capacity and addressing some of the shortcomings there in terms of capacity and what's going to be needed. Your work on flood risk particularly is exceptional and going in a great direction to be able to make very informed decisions. And also the OCP does have language in there already that's acknowledging the need to prepare for these types of impacts. So some good starting places there. The process that we followed aligns very closely with a recently released risk assessment framework that the province has put together and used to evaluate risks provincially. We didn't follow that because that just came out, but it's the same, essentially the same methodology as was followed there. And the first step in that that I'll talk about is vulnerability. So vulnerability is a function of what's exposed to these changes in the climate conditions and how sensitive are those elements of the system to those changes. And then also that combined with to what extent can we actually prepare and respond to these things. So some things we don't have a lot of agency in, some things we do and have a lot of capacity to respond to. So vulnerability is the combination of those two things. And when we had the multi-stakeholder group look at that, these were some of the things that came out up top. Flood impacts were amongst the highest. Those dominated the impacts that were considered high vulnerability, and in a range of ways, different types of flooding and different sources of flooding. So from the creek flooding to intense rainfall, but also rain on snow and that type of impact, and how that changes what you have to manage. Also, the concern about durability, the impact of freeze-thaw, rain on snow, and things like that on the durability of infrastructure and the maintenance needs for that. Concern about increasing pests and how that would impact some of the economic activity in the area, wildfires, both directly and other extreme events, both the impacts on health and response capacity, and also regionally how that would affect the city here. And water supply management, of course, is also a concern. So then we took that another step and looked at that shortened list, looked at, for each of those, what would be the degree of consequence that would be anticipated from those types of impacts, and then the likelihood of those happening to further sort those into high, medium, and low. And this just shows an example of what you can see more. I believe this was with what you received today. There's a summary report that provides just a quick snapshot of the work that we did. There's also a much longer report that has much more detail, but this one has the full tables, so you can see the results of the risk assessment across this range of different issues, and it shows both the ratings that were there, which was the basis for categorizing it as high, medium, high, and so on, and also the icons there show the service areas that are most expected to be most affected by these particular impacts. So this is the ones for flood, and then all the other categories are also in the summary report. And the top 5 risks that were identified in this one were, again, dominated by the flood impacts. So when we looked specifically at that combination of consequence and how likely those are to happen, flood impacts came to the top. And as I mentioned, everything from rain on snow events to the creek flooding and intense rainfall events in a more localized way, the sewer backups that you guys have been dealing with and managing already, and the impact that kind of has in a cascading way. And then also those freeze-thaw cycles and other extreme weather events, the impact on the durability of infrastructure was another key risk that came to the top from that. So as I mentioned, the last step in the process was to itemize a little bit more what's already happening, the existing actions that you're doing that do address a lot of these impact areas, and then also developing some potential directions to further address and build resilience to the kind of impacts that are expected. So the flood risk work that you're doing, the flood mapping project that's currently underway, was a key one for sure, given the flood impacts being among those top risks. Also, work that's going on to look at those different events that you're having more of, the rain on snow, freezing rain, and so on, and the impact on the infrastructure and management needs around that. So there's a number of things going on around that. Also looking at different possibilities for how to enable more of the intense rainfall to be absorbed as opposed to adding to the drainage system and overwhelming that. And public education is a really important one too, so we can, build bigger pipes and enhance the capacity of these systems, but there are always going to be situations where things are exceeded, so building that capacity through education and engagement of the public is also an important part, and investigating backup power for essential critical infrastructure is another key action that is being investigated now. And the project itself, so those were the three big areas for this round of funding, and the network itself will be meeting in January to talk about where to next, given that all the communities now have this information and direction. They'll be meeting to talk about how to leverage that and go forward, looking for shared opportunities to do studies together, to access funding and so on, and learn from each other. The staff who were working with us on this now have this to inform their work going forward and can bring this forward in the ways that they can in the work that's going on. And this can also be helpful. There are various funding opportunities that may benefit from being able to present this information. Infrastructure funding, for example, where bringing a climate lens is requested. So, and applying that climate lens across the organization in the ways that are possible. So those are some of the next step directions. And we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Questions for Council? Councillor Parslow?
Not so much a question, just a couple of comments. I think the last comment you made, applying a climate lens across the organisation, is the critical one to consider, because I think all the evidence is indicating that the business as usual is prevailing. In today's headline news from the BBC, we now have greenhouse gas emissions at all record high, and the likelihood of any change to that doesn't seem to be on the horizon. So we need to face the impacts of that by applying that climate lens to all our planning. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. And I think that is, that's really ideally the most effective thing that we can do, is to be bringing this understanding and information into everything that we do. So the more that can be picked up and shared within the organization and within decision making, we can just make better informed decisions. So, yeah.
Other questions, comments? I've just one or two things I want to address in the report we received, and it's on page 7, local vulnerabilities in a changing climate. And the first paragraph, during high and low flows on the river, Kiskatna River, water cannot be pumped into the reservoir. This could affect the amount of water stored and available in community reservoirs. Our community's never been in as good a position as we are today with the amount of water we have stored for future. So today, our community is now, we have 9 months or 10 months worth of storage capacity, which we've never had. 30 years ago, we almost ran out of water, and the beavers along the river and damming the river are actually what saved us from running out of water. So I just make that as one comment. There's another comment in here, or two more. Second paragraph, it said, the uncertainty around flow, and this comment is all about the timing of freshet on the Kiskatna River. In addition, April 2018 was reportedly the first time a serious flood risk on Dawson Creek occurred due to spring melt And I don't know if that's a statement. One, I don't remember us having a flood event in the spring of 2018 that was a serious flood risk. And then the third paragraph I want to raise, rain on snow events have stressed the capacity of our public works department and affected the safety and ease of travel. I don't believe that to be true.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that to be a true statement.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that our public works department have been stressed, and that stressed the capacity of our department affecting safety and ease of travel.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to raise that because that concerns me when I see that comment or that statement.
Yeah, yeah, and well taken. Thank you for pointing that out, because I can see how that would be read as in that way. Just to go back to the April 2018, that was something that was shared with us. It wasn't an actual flood event, but that there was an alert, or there was concern that it may turn into a serious, that it could turn into an event, and that was the first time that was that we got to that place from the actual spring melt. That's not typically where the flood threat comes from. So that was where that was from. And in terms of the stressing the capacity of the public works department and affecting safety and ease of travel, it does, I can see when you say it that way, that it sounds like that was a widespread problem. It was more of a localized issue, and stressed is in the sense of this is something that there's more of that happening than there was in the past.
So our staff have never raised that to this council, that we haven't had the capacity, or safety is an issue as a result of our public works department not being able to maintain it. And in fact, our policy is so strong that if we don't have the capacity, the policy says you can hire equipment and add equipment to the department if you need to ensure that the roads and infrastructure are looked after.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's just the wording of the statement.
Yeah, I
it
think
just
it's the wording
causes me concern.
because I think the it's not. Yeah, we can go back and review that and we can make that adjustment before this is released. Because I think what strikes me about what you're saying is that that's great that you have that capacity to enhance what can be done, and there's always that adjustment time. And with all of these things that we're talking about, there's many things that can be done, and there's that space of understanding what's happening, understanding what could be done about it, and then doing it right. So that transition period, I think, is what this is pointing to. So yeah, we can definitely revisit the wording. Thank you. Yeah.
Any other questions, comments for council? Thank you, guys. So it's great information. It's great detail for us in terms of understanding the impacts of a community and our core role of building community and ensuring that we respond to that in the future. I think in lots of respects we're very proactive about it, and lots of stuff, it's new data, it's new science, and we absolutely appreciate the work you guys have done. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
So we'll now move to item 3, new councillor business. Councillor Parslow.
Yes, thank you. Just a bit of background. I was asked to attend a meeting of local business people, all retired, but still active in other ways in the community. And Dale Campbell was also invited to attend that meeting. And as a follow-up to that, one of the participants asked me these questions, and I think they're questions that I think probably, given that we know there's a fair degree of issues around recycling and contamination, etc. So in discussing this briefly with our CAO, there was a question previously asked at a council meeting that was directed to the regional district. So I just wondered if you got any information about the question again, which was, where does the recycled material get processed? And that was the material being handled by the regional district. And so I'd forgotten that question. So my question that was asked of me is, where does the city recycling material go to be processed? Not sorted, processed. In other words, converted into recycled material.
So the legislation through the provincial government is that we are part of the solid waste management plan that's produced by the Peace River Regional District. We're legislated to be part of that process, and we are through the regional district, and so we pay for all of our solid waste is handled by the regional district through their solid waste management process, and they have a contract with R3 out of Fort St. John, I think, that are the contractor to handle their recycling materials that are collected through our curbside program that we pay for them to collect, but they're the ones through the RD. And so I think the question is, and we absolutely prepared to do this, is to have the RD come and the manager of the Peace River Regional District Solid Waste Management Program to be able to come and give council an update on it. Duncan, maybe you want to add?
Yeah, so through your worship, we've had some discussion about this at council before, and I asked Brenda to go back and see if we actually came out of it with a resolution. I don't think we were successful in finding a resolution, but in light of that, I do have some answers for the 3 questions. They're not in depth and they're not heavily researched, but there are some answers, and we can, if council chooses, as a result of this, get some more information from the RD. As you mentioned, this is their piece. The post collection is what they look after, but if I may, I can answer some of these questions if that's, yeah.
Go ahead.
So just from our previous discussions, and I can't talk about today, but Peter did a little bit of research for us. Our understanding is that the recycling after sorted is sent to 3 locations: Delta, Edmonton, and Tacoma, and we got that information a while ago, Peter. That's not necessarily today, but within, yeah, and that's from our local plant. As far as the frequency, we went to tender on our recycling program, and we built that frequency within that tender so that the contractor had that ability to bid on how many trucks they would require and how often they would be removing the material. We have the ability to negotiate. However, that would change the metrics of that current agreement that we have right now. So that would be some work, and we'd need to have a better understanding. There's some amortization of carts. There's a number of different moving parts within that.
I just want to clarify, though, the city does not have a recycling program. We have a curbside collection
recycling
program for waste as well as recycling material. But we don't have a recycling program. The regional district have the recycling program, of which we're a part of. We pay for the convenience of collection at the curb.
Correct. So, through your worship, we look after curbside, and we have tendered out to Waste Management the collection of curbside, and the frequency of that curbside is bi-weekly, and that was selected by council at that time and included in that tender.
Right.
As far as the process to ban single-use plastics with the City of Dawson Creek, and whether there's interest, obviously that's a council decision. All I can say on that point is we're aware of 3 communities that are doing that. Tofino, Uculet, and Salmon Arm. However, I don't know that it's been tested legally in those communities. The only community that we're aware has been tested legally is through Victoria, and they were not successful.
Go ahead.
Yes, I was able to share with them that waste management is a regional district function. They felt that there needs some clarification. They were concerned that the recycling pickup program that we have here, recycled material pickup program, there was contamination. What happens to it? Where does it get processed? They didn't have any question. In fact, I don't think the regional district has a clarity on that because of a conversation I had with Brad Sperling about that. So they just wanted those answers. The single-use plastics, we know that this is a big issue, and we know about Victoria's failure to enact that because of some, I guess, incorrect procedures. So the questions asked of me is that, well, what is the process and procedure if we wish to follow that route? I said I felt there were a number of municipalities, and here I stand to be corrected, but a number of municipalities recognizing that really this would require provincial government legislation, were petitioning the provincial government to take action. I'm just wondering if there's any information about that. Am I correct in that impression? Because that was my answer to them, but I don't know the facts there.
Okay.
So through your worship, this isn't something, again, we've done a lot of research in. This is something that we're aware of. My understanding with Victoria, and they're at the Supreme Court, Peter, is that where they're appealing through the Supreme Court? Is my understanding is it had at some point the jurisdiction was placed on the provincial government in requiring some approval, and that's why they weren't successful. But again, you know, you read in the media and you get some of that information. We don't have all of that information.
I do know from a conference presentation I went to in Quebec, the advice is that a municipality not move on this alone, because if you do it as a community, and I did tell these people this, if you do this alone, you put your local businesses at a disadvantage. It's the best approach to approach this either provincially or regionally, which makes sense to me.
Thank you. Councillor Wilbur?
Thank you, Your Worship.
You have feedback?
Man, there's an echo. Echo, echo, echo. I'll sit back. I don't really need the mic, so there you go. What I've done for people who have kind of asked me similar questions was, one, direct them to ask the PRRD, because we do have a curbside collection program. We're not running the program, so the questions should be directed to the program people, which is PRRD. Secondly, I've heard from a lot of people who would like recycling picked up every week because they use that more and have less garbage. So, I mean, that's a matter of preference. But when it comes to the whole topic on banning single-use plastic, all of that stuff, and I appreciate it, I truly do, these are things that start at home. These are not things that we should be divulging in or, you know, I get it, I understand it, but we should be teaching our children this at home, or teaching ourselves and educating ourselves on not using single-use plastic. I find it a waste of money that could be used better somewhere else. I find it a waste of time to go around and around in a conversation where really we should be focusing on educating our community, ourselves, and our children on creating a better environment for the earth. And it starts at home. So as much as I appreciate these questions, I do not think these are anything that we should be involving ourselves in. We have a curbside recycling program. I hear from people all the time that want it picked up every week. Personally, my family could have their garbage can picked up once a month or every other month, but I could have my recycle bin picked up every week because we're dedicated to doing it. So I think some of this is really just about ourselves. So I just want to put that out there because I do get lots of calls and I understand where the person's coming from that's talked to Councillor Parcel. But if you're really concerned about single-use plastics, don't use them. It's that simple. Just stop buying them, stop using them. All of a sudden, there's a change made in the world. So I think that's really the bigger conversation that we need to have.
So just in response, the huge issue that we're facing, our community, and lots of contamination with the curbside, and that's a huge cost factor to all of us through the Peace River Regional District who are responsible for the overall costs of solid waste management plan. So all of us, all of our residents, municipal, regional, everybody pays for that post-collection cost. The more contamination, the more handling, the more cost it goes, the more it contaminates the recycling, so it can't be, it's contaminated the entire piece of the collection, so that impacts it. So the RD is absolutely looking at waste energy as an example of a way that we can perhaps be more effective in the use of the overall impact of the recycling materials and having a way to deal with it. And so it's a big issue, it's a big discussion that's going on behalf of the regional district. It's increasing costs for all of us for those post-collection costs. And so I just want to clarify that. The solid waste management plan that we have with the Peace River Regional District, it's absolutely peppered with recycling as a key piece of how we manage the waste collection and recycling. And so we're all responsible for those costs, and and at the RD, it's 25 or 30% of the overall budget of the Peace River Regional District. So it's a big cost item, and the more that we're recycling and the contamination, the more it costs us all. So, Councillor Earl, then Councillor Lexner.
Okay, just a few points to weigh in on with respect to the frequency of the recycling. For my family, bi-weekly is a pretty good fit. That may be, as people retire and their kids are gone and they're not going to work every day, once a month might be sufficient. But for those of us who have a couple pets, have a kid or two, and that's a pretty good fit. We do try and be diligent. I don't think I'm as diligent as Councillor Wilbur, to hear her say it, but we're doing okay. Single-use plastics, somewhat agree that this is, there are a number of businesses in the city of Dawson Creek which have voluntarily moved away from single-use plastics. Most recently, I think, the Butcher Block, Lawrence Meats. So if consumers are concerned with that, as Councillor Wilbur said, stop buying it, but also you can go speak to local businesses about what their challenges are and what the business case is for moving away from single-use plastics. And that might be a more effective way than having the government, or especially municipal government, futilely try and impose it on people. And lastly, but just with respect to the recycling material and how it's processed and where does it go, I would be more interested in getting some more information on, I guess, the life cycle or the chain of custody as this stuff, because as I hear, we're recycling stuff and then we're shipping it to Delta and Washington State to be processed and shipped somewhere else, given the presentation we just had about GHG emissions and the impact that's going to have on our community. I do worry, there is a carbon footprint that is incurred by shipping garbage thousands of kilometers, and I do worry we're one step forward, two step backs. Just some more information so I can become more familiar with what exactly is going on there, because that's something that kind of raised an alarm bell for me, and I'd like to learn more about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lexner?
Thanks, Your Worship. Just two quick things. One, if we're going to do anything with recycling, I would encourage us, if we enter a discussion, that we look to how do we include glass and plastic bags in it. I get a lot, and I'm on this page. I've recycled since the beginning, did a great job, I think, our family. I used to take it all down. Now we have a recycling program that you can put everything plastic bags and glass in. My feeling, a lot of that is now getting diverted to the garbage because people are saying, I'm not going to recycle and recycle. So I think that's a concern I have. I'd like to see us and look to other communities as to what they do. Maybe nobody does it, and the other one, I think I would very much appreciate us getting information from the regional district. The last thing I want to do when a constituent asks where does it go is say, that's not our program, talk to the regional district. I think that's somewhat discouraging because we pick it up. I think if you asked 99% of the population of Dawson Creek, they are not differentiating that, we collect it, but they deal with it, so you got to ask them that. I don't think it's too hard. Once a year, get an update from the RD where this stuff goes. We'd have the answer. The whole goal of council is to make it easy for our constituents to understand what we do as a city. So that would be it.
So I think it's worthwhile to engage and have the RD come and give us an update. We've done, through Solid Waste Management Committee, done a bunch of analysis on the waste that's going in, both the waste that's going into our landfills as well as the recycling, and have both the contractor and Solid Waste Committee folks give an update and give a presentation to council on answering some of these questions that council obviously have, and I think it's perfectly appropriate. Councillor Wilbur, one last time.
Just to follow up, I have no problem giving the information, but I think also getting the right information out so people know where to get it. The information is on the regional district site, so I don't think it's discouraging not giving it to our constituents, but I think they need to know how the program works, and that's part of education. And I think part of stopping contamination in our recycle bins, again, is education on how to recycle properly, and that's going to lie with the person at the end who is recycling it. And I think they're doing a better job at it, but I don't think it's discouraging, but I think it is making clear through education to the public what our part of it is, what the regional district's part of it is, and where you can get that information, because the information is out there. It literally is on their website.
Thank you. Anything further? Thank you, Councillor Parslow. Good job.
Anything
Now I need fresh air, Parslow.
Do we have other new councillor business? Councillor Lekstrom and Councillor Earl?
Just a couple of things, Your Worship. On Friday, I attended the Northern Lights College and had a chance to speak with Amna Khalid's business management class. There were 32 students that certificates of recognition were handed out to. I was part of that, but the key was this group of international students have been out in the community raising funds. You'll have seen them at Safeway, you'll see them at different events. They raised $5,200 to donate to nonprofit organizations in our city. They all made presentations on how they went about it, the different groups. It was quite amazing. Talked about, they were scared when they first went out in the community, not knowing how they'd be received, people wondering why they were collecting money. At the end of it, there was overwhelming support for their efforts and their acceptance into the community, and it was just a great event that I was able to participate in. The other one, this Friday coming up, the caribou issue, people are asking all the time. I have a unique position in that. There is a leaders table taking place in Vancouver, of which local government, Peace River Regional District, our mayor is part of, along with industry and the government. West Moberly and Soto First Nations chiefs are at the table. So we're going to go down there and see where we can take this and try and take the Caribou Recovery Plan and the draft partnership agreement, the Section 11 agreement, and make it work for everybody. So that's just a quick update on where that's at. I know I've had numerous questions. It's been some time, and it seemed to have been stalled, but there's work ongoing. Hopefully Friday is a good day. Just a quick update.
Thank you. Thank you for attending the college thing as well. That was good. Councillor Earl.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'll try and be quick. So last Wednesday, I attended the annual general meeting of the Dawson Creek Exhibition Association. I just wanted to congratulate them on another successful year. They had a couple rainy days coming out of the hop, but they managed to, finish strong. You wouldn't know that they've done it 97 years, given how passionate and ambitious they remain. They're going on 98, and they very appreciative of the city's efforts in securing that lease agreement. That opened up some opportunities for them moving forward around other sources of funding, grants, and whatnot. So kudos to them. Looking forward to the 98th exhibition. And then on Friday evening, I just wanted to Saturday, I guess, I attended the cash spiel for the Dawson Creek Curling Club, their dinner, and it was the 47th annual cash spiel they've done. And they had a bunch of people, both local throughout the region. They had a couple teams from as far away as China attend. So really great to see all those people in town using the facility, hanging out, spending money. And once again, congratulations to them on a great community activity.
Thank you. Thank you for attending those, both. Councillor Javetkov was the original founding president of that exhibition 98 years ago.
98 years ago.
Councillor Parslow.
There goes the clock.
Relating to the exhibition, the meeting you went to, was there any financial report presented?
I didn't get to stick around for that. I had to head home to put a child to bed, but it will, as part of their new lease agreement with us, they provide annual financials, so we'll be seeing that shortly.
It's when their AGM is finished is when they get their financial statement or their financial package put together, and we'll be getting a copy of that, so after the AGM. Thank you. Anything further for council? Thank you. So we'll take a 6-minute recess. Yes, Brenda?
Just to confirm, was there any action to come from Councillor Parcel's first item?
No.
Do we need to direct staff to
do you want
do a presentation? Or
Regional district presentation.
So a regional district. So we'll take that forward and maybe bring it back, and we'll bring a formal motion. Oh, we can do that now because it wasn't necessary.
He actually put it forward as a motion.
So we'll bring that forward as a formal motion that we will respond to those 3 questions and ask the RD to come and do a presentation to council at a future meeting. By way of a motion, Councillor Parslow, seconded Councillor Earl. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So we'll take a 7-minute recess. No. Next on our agenda is our minutes, and the minutes of our regular meeting of council for November 4th for adoption. Councillor Kemp, second Councillor Earl. Any errors or omissions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And 4.2, the minutes of our special meeting of council for November 15th for adoption. Councillor Wilbur, Councillor Kemp. Any errors or omissions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Business arising. Councillor Lexstrom.
Just a quick one in the first minutes, Your Worship. 3.2 was the lights I raised at 17th and Alaska Avenue here about a month ago. They were flashing all weekend. I know that Argo has a contract, I think, or Highways does, with I'm trying to remember the name of the company that looks after those. But did we find out any reason that they could have potentially been out from Friday night until Monday morning? Was this just a lack of response from the contract? Because it is a huge safety issue for me and the people of this city. And if it was just they didn't want to call somebody out, they should have a different contractor.
Through your worship.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so through your worship, I did reach out to Argo. Argo had placed the call on the Friday that they went out to the contractor, which is West Canada.
West Canada.
I reached out to West Canada via email that Monday that we had the question, asking about the timing, and never did receive a response.
Could we follow through, Your Worship, if that's possible, and just say, I mean, it concerns me. It's one of the busiest and probably the highest potential impact for accidents in our city, and to see that go all weekend, I can tell you downtown Vancouver, downtown Kelowna, this wouldn't have occurred. I'm sure they would have been out, so.
So we'll make that by way of a motion that we want to direct staff to follow up with Argo and West Canada to get an answer to why the lights were out on the weekend, whatever it was, and provide a response to council.
Okay.
Moved by Councillor Lexstrom, second Councillor Earl. Discussion? Okay, Duncan, any questions?
Appropriate or mayor's business, Brenda? We can do it through business arising? Okay.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Anything further? Business arising? Thank you. Item 6, correspondence. 6.1, we have a letter from Sandra Rosebone Grindle, our CPA, Chartered Professional Accountants, regarding our interim audit. Councillor Parslow.
I move we receive it for information.
Thank you. Second. Councillor Wilbur. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 6.2, we have an email from Kelly Smith, Congress Coordinator from the Peace Country Beef Congress, who are holding their 2020 Beef Congress in Dawson Creek in, I think it's in January, early January. I haven't got it up on my screen. It used to be a event that was conducted through northwestern Alberta, northeast BC, and Dawson, Fort St. John. Because of the Canada Event Center with the Lakota Center and the venue, they now do it annually in Dawson Creek. They don't move it around. They found that to be the best facility location for them to get their participation, and so they're looking to us for a sponsorship opportunity. Duncan, Flavia, this would come under grants and sponsorship?
Correct.
Do we have any idea what the current budget looks like for that?
So, as of today, the net balance available is $4,950.
It's almost $5,000. Thank you.
Almost.
Councillor Lexstrom?
Your Worship, I'm going to move a motion. I'm happy to hear a discussion before I do that, but if it's all right, I would move at this time. I guess I need a question first. Have we sponsored in the past? And if so, at what level?
We've sponsored in the past at different levels. I don't think we have for the last couple of years. Duncan?
So through your worship, 2016, $2,500, 2017, $5,000, 2018, $5,000, 2019, $0.
Okay.
Go ahead.
At this time, Your Worship, noting our grants budget and where it sits, I would move that the City of Dawson Creek become a silver sponsor of the Peace Country Beef Congress at a total amount of $2,500.
Thank you. Do you have a second? Councillor Earl, discussion? Councillor Earl?
Because this event does fall in 2020, would this not come out of next year's sponsorship budget? Or would it does any remaining sponsorship monies get rolled over?
We can consider this as a deferred revenue, so we can use from this fund.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
We approve it now, and whether we cut the check now or at the December, it's still out of our 2019 budget. Thank you. Further discussion? I'm going to speak in favor of it. I think it's absolutely appropriate to me that this is an agriculture, a really great message that these guys do it at the Encana Event Center, agricultural event promoting cattle and the farm equipment and all of that stuff that's important to our community and region, and really believe it's a good event for us to be a part of. Councillor Earl, you had
No, just in addition to yours, and speaking in favor of it. So I was working at the Encana Event Center when the event came over and became an annual event, and to see it grow every year, and it's not just, I mean, it's agriculture, but everything that touches on agriculture. There's booths there from Farm Credit Canada, local John Deere, all the equipment provider. You know, there's really gives you an appreciation for just how broad our agricultural base is and how important it is, and to have it become the annual meeting site as opposed to be once every third year. There's a lot of people that come in from out of town for this and stay for a couple days so they can get their business done. So in favor of it. It's a great event, and the amount of work they put into growing it every year and making it that much more vital to the region, I think, is something we should support.
Thank you. Sorry, Brenda?
Through your worship, just would like to get clarification if this is to come out of 2019 budget or 2020 budget, just because it's...
I think we want it to come out of 2019 budget. Yeah.
2019?
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. You ready for the question?
Oh,
Councillor Wilbur?
I noticed in that package there's banquet tickets, and I know we do have a policy around that, so I'm just wondering if it's worth, instead of getting the banquet tickets, that we have a booth in their trade show, even if it's just an information booth, not necessarily a manned booth, but have our city information up, even if it's a business table or something, rather than take those banquet tickets that we would then have to give out to somebody.
Yeah, but if we put so you're talking about an unmanned booth or a booth?
An unmanned booth. I see they have a home business table, they have a table, so I'm assuming those are areas where you could just put information, but maybe it's just a matter of saying the City of Dawson Creek welcomes you, and we have a couple of our stand-up banners or something there, versus taking banquet tickets that we would then have to give out to somebody else as per our policy.
But then we would have to have
the-
somebody go down, set up the booth, and take it down, and I don't know if it'd been...
I'm just putting it out there
Yeah.
as an option.
So through your worship, yeah, I mean, there's always a cost, right? I don't know if the dates, and honestly, we didn't look at it that closely. Somebody will have to set it up, someone will have to take it down. If they need to take it down on a Sunday, somebody will have to come in and do that. And I don't know, and again, I haven't looked at it closely, if they would allow us to trade those tickets off for a booth, but I don't know.
I just thought.
Yep.
Councillor Lexon?
Just following through, Councillor Wilbur's raised the issue. So I've got to brush up apparently on some policies. Would it not be a good idea to have council represented at this Beef Congress and at the thing? And if there's 5 tickets and the mayor and 4 willing councillors are willing to go, I think that's what we do as councillors, as attendees. This isn't a perk that you're getting on behalf of the city because you're a councillor. This is our business. This is what we do. So, and I got to go back and read the policy, councillor. I'm guessing it says something like we can't go to dinners, I'm guessing, or? So
we have a policy now on the graph. So if we, as the exhibition, so if we give them $10,000 as sponsorship for the, and we got 10 tickets for council, we put the policy in place that would be given out to our community groups rather than a benefit to the councillors who are then putting money for it. If council gets invited to attend to represent the mayor and council at the event, then we can use the tickets for those events.
Okay.
So it was just it was simply a way for us to make sure that we as councillors weren't benefiting from the sponsorship of events that we were paying through the budget of the city.
Wow, I guess we should look at that. It doesn't seem like a big perk to go to a dinner to represent what you're elected to represent, which is the people of Dawson Creek. So
it was more about the Exhibition Association, where we get 5-day passes for each of the councillors, and that's how they were being used. That's what brought it about.
Yeah.
So we're off a little topic.
Okay, sorry,
I want to get
But
back
it's part
on.
of the sponsorship,
Yeah.
that's why I
Yeah.
brought it up.
So if,
Yeah, I get that.
if we are invited to attend, if we get tickets to the banquet and they want one of us or some of us to attend, then that's what we would use the tickets for. If not, then we would give them out to community groups to attend.
Works for me.
We'll have a tough time deciding who we give 5 tickets to, I can see that.
Yeah. Well, and you know, at
Are
the
you-
beef
are you-
congress, the steak's usually pretty good.
You're not having chicken. Are you ready for question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 6.3, we have a letter from Gail Corrali regarding the Dawson Creek Cadets, and this was an email that she sent to me that I wanted to bring forward. It's a question to council of us providing space. The college, the local Air Cadets, Squadron 353 would meet at the college and do their training, their march, all that stuff there, and because of the college getting rid of some of their old space, they don't have a place for them any longer, and so they're looking for a place, I assume. So this is why it's before council. Councillor Earl?
So I looked into this a little bit. So the to the best of my knowledge, and I don't know if it's a permanent arrangement or not, but the cadets will be moving over to some space in the new trades building as the facility they're currently in is being decommissioned. Previously, the Legion was in the space right next to J&K Travel Professionals across from the credit union where I work. They, a couple months ago, moved out, and they moved into the same space as the cadets, as they couldn't afford the rent. So they are seeking a new permanent home. I know at the credit union, I've reached out to them because we do have some office space there we can provide some support for, but the hours we're open as a financial institution didn't work because their meetings primarily happen on Saturdays. So I think there's a number of places throughout town that would be willing to help out. It's just a matter of finding a right fit for their needs and the hours they keep in as they do the business. Similarly with the cadets, I'm not sure to the extent that if it's a permanent arrangement or it's just temporary while they look for something else.
Yeah, the request is for us as a city to find them a space, and that's why it's here.
So presumably, the staff, there's no space we have, is there?
Sure. So I'm trying not to jump ahead because I don't think there's been a motion on this yet.
Nope, not yet.
Okay. So I'll.
Do a motion, I move for discussion.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay. So
All in
three-
favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Okay.
Duncan?
Now go.
I'm just keeping Brenda happy, I swear. So,
What
through your
about
worship,
me?
so the cadets, used to operate out of the old post office originally, and they stored all of their equipment down there, and then when we renovated that facility, they moved, and they were in that building for a number of years. We used to store a number of their items in sea cans on 115th in a place that we rented at that time. And since then, it's my understanding that we're not storing that anymore. Our challenge is really the storage. If the cadets were looking for a place to rent or use, we have the Kin Arena, we have the upstairs meeting space, we have a number of spaces. It's the permanent storage that we've always struggled with, and if you recall, we have the Legion using some storage space in the Kin Arena just because there's no permanent storage available in space that they require. So we're very limited. We don't really have a space that I'm aware of that they could use, and we've spoken with them a number of times in the past.
So we have no space that we could, other than rental space, that we would then be adding more rental costs onto it.
Yeah, and through your worship, it's that permanent storage. Again, like the Kin Arena upstairs is a beautiful meeting space. It's quite large. It's the materials that they want to store on site that becomes a challenge.
Thank you. And we haven't had an official request from the Air Cadet Squadrons or the Legion to us. This is a citizen. Okay, no action. Thank you. We'll move on. And 6.4, we have a letter from Lisa Helps, Mayor of the City of Victoria, regarding a request for support. Councillor Parslow?
I'd like to move that we support this letter from the City of Victoria. Basically, they're asking that to ensure that people at risk of overdose across BC have access to observed consumption services that provide for inhalation. The province of British Columbia fund and work through local communities, health authorities across the province, Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions, and the Ministry of Health to provide these services as part of a holistic response to the public health emergency, including prevention, treatment and recovery. I think I'm inclined to want to personally support this.
Thank you.
Invite council to do that.
Second, Councillor Wilbur, discussion. Councillor Lackstrom.
Your worship, on this, I will vote against this. For the simple reason, we have looked at what we have in a society, and certainly there's challenges, but it has never made sense to me that if you're a heroin addict and heroin is illegal, that you have your packet of heroin, you walk down the street, you walk by an RCMP officer or city police officer, walk into a safe injection site, and walk out high as a kite. It just, either society has to deal with the real issue, which is, should you look at legalization of these drugs, which would then make it work or not? This just seems to be a Band-Aid that says, we know it's illegal, we're going to turn the eye to make sure we can help people, because it does help. I'm not arguing the fact that it doesn't help, but it makes no sense. If you've got a substance that's illegal and then we're promoting the use of it, or the safer use of it, and I want to be very clear on that, I struggle with that, and I always have. So I want to make sure that if, you know, when the votes are cast, people know why I cast my vote.
Thank you. Councillor Earl.
So I'm inclined to vote in support of the motion. Having said that, I can appreciate, I mean, I think where the disconnect happens is drugs are a federal issue and they're treated as a criminal justice issue, and at a provincial level, the province is responsible for healthcare, and certainly we as communities are also seeking ways to make sure our citizens have access to vital health services and whatnot. So there is kind of a competing interest. There is treating this as a healthcare issue in order to help people get well when they desire the assistance, in order to make as people consume drugs, especially heroin or anything that involves needles, there's some healthcare costs that come along with people. In addition to the human costs, there's healthcare costs that come along with people not being able to do that safely, that impact all of us as taxpayers and as citizens. So although, yeah, I appreciate the contradictory nature of it is illegal, it is a criminal offense, but we do also, as people who try and provide healthcare and try and do that in an intelligent, civilized, compassionate way, I tend to err on the side of health and well-being of individuals.
Thank you. Further, Councillor Parslow.
Yes, I focused on the health crisis, which I infer to be the opioid crisis, and that's what drew my attention to it. No, I don't see any specific drug such as heroin mentioned here, and we know that every community is being touched by the opioid crisis, which is I'm not up on those things, maybe I should know, but I don't know that opioids are illicit drugs. They may be obtained through the underground market, but isn't the part of the problem overprescription, which leads to dependency? And so I think it's a different kettle of fish than heroin, but that's where I'm coming from. Yeah.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Just to be clear, and I follow that. I think opioids, it talks about an inhalation site with, could be the crystal meth epidemic, be all of that. So I think it is a difficult one, but I think it covers a wide range of,
it does
under
cover,
the therefore
yeah.
that be it resolved. But.
Thank you. Further discussion? I think honestly we'll see, hopefully in the next month we'll have Staff Sergeant, some of the community folks that are working the streets in Dawson Creek, the nurses, and through Northern Health on our homelessness and all of that stuff. That's been a real eye-opener to me in terms of that interagency group, and we saw the tents popping up in our parks this year, and So to me, from that perspective, anything we can do to find a way to help that public health issue of folks living on the streets and a really tough life cycle sometimes they get themselves into, and that's what I'm focusing on, the prevention and treatment and recovery of these folks, and provide them with some options. Further discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Good discussion. 6.5, we have a letter from Charlie Rorison, the grant writer from the City of Dawson Creek, regarding the Business Facade Improvement Program. Councillor Lexstrom.
At this time, Your Worship, I would move that the City Council supports the application to the Northern Development Initiative Trust from the City of Dawson Creek with Community Futures Peace Liard for a grant of up to $20,000 for the Business Improvement Facade Program from the Regional Development Account of NDIT.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Wilbur, discussion? Councillor
This is just another opportunity for the city and the region to access a grant. This is to help the, certainly I would say, focus more on the downtown community cores without, we know they're a struggle right across this country. I think we're very fortunate to have a strong and vibrant downtown core, but this, I think, can move forward to help that somewhat, and it's always good to get that cross-regional account money flowing to the Northeast.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, so it used to be, it was the Downtown Business Facade Improvement Program, to Blair's point. It now is the Business Facade Program, because I know I had a request one time from somebody outside the downtown core that didn't qualify, so I really like the broadening of it to allow and ensure that it opens it up. Good stuff. Any further questions, comments? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 6.6, we have a letter from Dr. Raina Fumerton, the Acting Chief Medical Health Officer, and Dr. Kim, the Medical Health Officer for Northeast BC, regarding the letter we sent on Rotary Lake. Councillor Parslow?
I'd like to move that we receive this for discussion.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Kemp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Go ahead.
Just a question. As I think there are aspects of this that we need to discuss in camera at a later date today. Just flagging that. But I think this letter should be obviously presented to the public for public information, but there are some implications and discussion that I think as they involve legal matters, potentially should be discussed in camera.
Okay. Councillor Lexstrom?
It's just flowing through. I would agree with Councillor Parslow. I think we're going to have a further in-depth discussion based on the legality of it. Very disappointed in the letter. I'll express that right off the bat. It seems to contradict their willingness to work with the city and try and work towards a resolution to this facility. It's clear that Northern Health's objective is do as we say and everything will be fine, and that's how we'll listen. It is staggering to me that they've taken that approach. This facility, as I've said, has been operated in our city for decades and decades. It's a valuable asset to our community. We have offered to ensure the safety aspects are dealt with, and we will continue to do that. Safety is of our utmost importance as well. So to receive this letter is just really further clarification of what I think I interpreted when they were before us, is that unless you do everything we say, we're not going to work with you. So again, very unfortunate on behalf of Northern Health to take that attitude.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Lexstrom?
With this, I'll look for direction from yourself as the chair. How would we move this into our in-camera set? Because I'd certainly like to discuss it from a legal perspective on behalf of the city.
Yeah, I think now at this point we have to move a table. We would just refer it to closed because of the litigation, and then we'll have that discussion within a closed, and direction then will come from there.
All right.
So, Councillor Parslow, second Councillor Lexstrom. So the motion is that we would refer the letter back into our closed because of the litigation, and Council can discuss it in the closed meeting. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 7, reports, 7.1, memo from the corporate officer, and this is to motion just to simply ratify the Métis flag raising for Louis Riel Day that we had on November 18th, I think, and we had to do that because it kind of caught us in between meetings, and we had response from council that they were approve of it. So I just need a motion to ratify that. Councillor Wilbur?
Motion to ratify.
Second, Councillor Kemp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Parslow?
Just, I mean, can this not be in the future covered by a policy?
Annual?
Annually. I mean, it's a significant day, and I think we should be able to have this and other days identified and covered by policy.
Sure. It's a great point. Do we have other aspects like that, Brenda, where we do certain things through protocol as a result of we fly the flag at half-mast on Remembrance Day because of Remembrance Day, and we raise other flags as a result? Can we is there a policy around that, and can we include this in there?
There's many events that are we follow the flag protocol as per Canada's website, but in regards to community events or community representatives coming and asking, I would suggest that it be just a resolution that it be approved on an annual basis, and it doesn't have to come back. That's if that's council's wish.
Okay.
I'd like to move that.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Parslow, second. Councillor Kemp. Discussion. Councillor Electra.
Are we dealing with just the Louis Riel on this one?
Suggestion, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But there may be others. I don't know.
Well, that's what I was thinking, if there are others within that protocol maybe. But anyway, we'll deal with this one, and if others come up, it's a good point, right? Rather than doing the old telephone poll. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 7.2, we have report number 19175 from the corporate officer regarding our Dawson Creek Library Board appointments. Councillor Earl?
Move the recommendation that report number 19-175 from the corporate officer regarding library board appointments be received. Further, that Ms. Shields be appointed to the board for a one-year term beginning December 1st, 2019 and ending November 30th, 2020. Further, that Councillor Amy Kemp be reappointed to the library board as representative from the city of Dawson Creek for a one-year term further. Kim Erickson be reappointed to the library board for a two-year term.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Wilbur. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 7.3, we have report number 19179 from the Financial Services Manager regarding our cemetery compliance audit. Councillor Wilbur.
I move that it be received for information.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Kemp. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. .4, we have report 19178 from the Chief Financial Officer regarding our 2020 preview BC assessment roll. Proceed for discussion. Councillor Lekstrom, second. Councillor Earl, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Duncan, Flavia, would you like to speak to this?
Yeah, we'll let Flavia maybe run us through the report, through your worship.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome.
Thank you. So we received the preview, which is the one that is really generic. We don't have the information about number of the specific roles. But based on this preliminary assessment, BC Assessment Authority did a significant change on the way of the residential classes are assessed for this year. So that's the reason there is a drop of almost 2% from the total assessed value comparing to the previous year. Also regarding to major industry, the reduction about 3% at this time is mainly for the appeals that happened at the beginning of the year compared to the previous year. And then commercial, they are, BC assessment said the value is actually increasing. The value of commercial properties sold in Dawson in this year has increased, so therefore they are reflecting this increase in the assessed value. we have 4 major industry main change that may not affect 2020, but it's expected to affect in 2021, which is the air liquid curtailment, the closure for the plant by the end of this year. So we had been discussions with BC Assessment. They understand because of the timing of air liquid communicate to them about the closure. It's not gonna direct affect the numbers by the end of this year. However, depending on the direction that they will take, can be a reduction of 90% of the land improvement or a classification change from major industry to commercial. So that's all gonna be depending on the position that they have in the next year or so. And overall, if we would assume the same mill rate based on the current assessed value, we would have an increase of 458,000 in property tax collection, assuming, as I said, the previous the mill rate under the new assessed value. That's about 2.8% increase. And I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Flavia. Questions for Flavia?
Let's mark it that.
One of the things I'll speak to, because I'm going to speak to it more in Mayor's Business, but I was in Calgary last week, and one of the prime reasons, first of all, that I wanted to go was to meet with Air Liquide, exactly as a result of the announcement that they've curtailed their operations here. And so 2 or 3 things have resulted in the curtailment for Air Liquide. One, the real absolute decline in the use of liquid nitrogen in the industrial natural gas process for hydraulic fracturing. They can use what they call water, sand, and liquid, or they use liquid nitrogen. Liquid nitrogen is a little more expensive up front, but they don't have the post costs of dealing with produced water. But Shell were the big customer for Air Liquide here. And over the last 5 years, Shell's activity in the region has declined. They're not doing a bunch of activity here because of the delay for LNG Canada. So as a result of that, Air Liquide has really seen a decline in their operation. And they have seen that decline. They run the plant now for maybe a week to fill the plant, the tanks up with liquid nitrogen, then they're available for industry. And so when I met with the VP in Calgary and the Senior Manager of Operations, they believe that the demand will come back in the future. It's just this decline in the market conditions that are impacting their operation right now, and there just is not enough for them to continue to sustain the operation. And so they're going to kind of idle her down. It'll be started up every once in a while just to ensure the equipment continues to operate. And they'll make the decision in terms of the long term next year. I've asked them if they could get their salespeople to me in terms of economic development, and then I can get to the industry guys and see what kind of a sense and help try to bridge that for them in the long term for that viability of liquid nitrogen. I still think it's a really valuable service and a real valuable commodity that they have and will have here for the long term for that natural gas development along with ferrous. And so they were very good about the interaction and the reach out, and we'll continue to work with them now and their sales staff and their team with industry and ensuring what we can do to keep that equipment here and keep it as a service in the community for the long term. Councillor Lexter.
Just following through on the report, and thank you for the report. The one that really jumps out at me as we look through our future planning for budgets is the statement that talks about the data shows that our current year assessment has continued to plateau. You know, we had seen some significant growth in our community over the last decade, particularly, I would say. That plateauing is going to have an impact on our ability when we look at future budgets. And you know, I think it's when times are good and we're seeing those increases, that revenue certainly comes in to help offset increased costs. The plateauing will mean that we're going to have to look even further and harder to find the ability to fund the programs that make our community the great place it is. But I didn't want it to go unnoticed that as we look at our assessment rates, as we look at what our roles are doing, the comment about plateauing is very important for us in our budgetary discussions. So.
Thank you. Further comments, questions? Thank you, Flavia. So motion to receive
information.
for information. Councillor Earl, second Councillor Wilbur. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 7.5, we have report 19-180 from the city planner regarding a temporary use permit for Coleman Creek Investments. Councillor Lexstrom, are you ready?
Well, I'm just speeding through, Your Worship. I would move that report number 19-180 from the city planner, read temporary use permit 19-03, application Coleman Creek Investments for 721 113th Avenue be received, and further that the temporary use permit be granted for a period of 3 years to allow for automobile rentals at 721 113th Avenue.
Thanks. Second, Councillor Wilbur. Discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. 7.6, we have report 19-182 from the city planner regarding a development permit security release for Allen offices. Councillor Javekov.
I'll move the report number 19-182 from the city planner, redevelopment permit security release, Allen offices, 928 103rd Avenue be received. Further, that the development permit security for DP 18-03 be released after receiving an as-built site plan, sending out public notification, and no negative comments being received.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Kemp. Discussion? Councillor Lexstrom.
If should this motion pass, does that mean they have met their development permit then? It is good if we release the funding?
Duncan.
So through your worship, the reason this report's in front of you is because they have changed their development permit a little bit from the original submission. Ran into some challenges on site and had to make some modifications. In our opinion, it's not substantial, the amount of change, but because we went out to the neighbors and we went out to the surrounding properties with this original plan, through our due diligence, we feel it's important to show them a new updated plan to say there were some slight changes and ensure that that hasn't changed how the neighboring properties felt about the DP. And so if we were to receive negative comments, then it would come back in front of council again. But as you mentioned, Councillor Lexstrom, if you approve this as is and we receive no feedback, then the project is done.
All right. And the reason I say it's a great addition to our downtown core. It's a beautiful building.
Yeah, I agree, and I think some of the aspects that the modification around landscaping and parking and the garbage container unit and things are minor in relation to the overall development permit, and so I agree. I think Shane's done a really great job of investing in downtown and building a great building and for the long term. Councillor Lex?
Just following through, the one question I did have, the garbage containment. Now, and I'm not sure I read this right, are they going to have an enclosure, or do they have an enclosure now, or is this an open area for the garbage can to sit?
So through your worship, just talking to Kevin, I believe he has no outdoor garbage storage, and he has a contract with an individual to remove it from the building. So
okay, thank you.
Is that right, Kevin? Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 7.7, we have report 19-174 from the General Manager of Development Services regarding the community group transit meeting we directed as a result of transit. Councillor Parslow?
My preference is alternative 3, which is the elimination of transit completely, and the rest of and looking to partner with Step Up and Ride. But in saying that, I believe I would need some more information. Information is, and this is I'm not casting any dispersions towards staff whatsoever in this, okay? Because this is a moving platform. I would need to know what arrangements they would be from the point of view of cost to the city. And also, my feelings are also heavily influenced by the fact that I am completely disappointed with the school district's response. And maybe we need to ask the school district a specific question. The question I would ask them is, what is their cost of picking up students at Crescent Park School and Frank Ross as rural buses drop off students there, and then dropping them off at the southern part of town by Central School, etc. What is their cost? And then offering to cover that cost. I can't believe that they will say that we're not picking up kids when they're dropping kids off at their schools. So that's my preference, and I believe that, and I do appreciate the work that Transit has done and their approach and response to this very much. I appreciate that. It's a classy act. But my preference is number 3, but we would need more information. And I'm also sensitive to the fact that there are some deadlines for decisions which escape me vis-a-vis Transit. We need to renew by a certain date. So do you know the date for that, Mayor?
Well, we haven't made a decision at all in terms of the transit.
No, but if we...
So I think when we make that decision, we put into it the dates in which we're looking for the new agreement. Duncan?
Just procedural, can we?
So let's just, if we can just have a motion for discussion at this point, and then we can, Councillor Earl, Councillor Kemp, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Go ahead, Duncan.
So through your worship, is it 6 months, Kevin, to make changes to the agreement? And I know when Transit just presented, they had said, their preference or recommendation would be June, but minimum is 6 months?
Yeah, through your worship, when Transit was here last, they indicated that in order to implement by June, they needed some answers by the end of November.
Okay. Councillor Earl?
So I get the impression from reading this report that to the extent Step Up and Ride, their interest is tepid at best, if that. I don't get the impression that if we were to cancel the contract with BC Transit, we would have an eager partner in Step Up and Ride. Following with respect to the school district, I would have liked to see more input from them with respect to helping with the busing, since a large component of this is kids going to and from school. Having met with them, I understand where they're coming from. I appreciate they don't provide in-town busing, and they haven't previously, and obviously if they begin in Dawson Creek, then it opens a whole can of worms for them around doing the same in Tumbler Ridge and Chetwynd. So although it would be nice to have a more eager partner in them, I understand where they're coming from, and I can respect that. In light of that, and given that we've kind of reached our drop-dead date, I think our best option is to continue on with one of the options presented by Transit. And out of respect for the work they've done, and out of everyone we've approached about working with us to make this arrangement better, they seem to be the most eager and willing to meet us where we'd like to be met. So that would be my preference, but I'm happy to hear thoughts from the rest of council.
Thank you. Councillor Parslow?
Just point of information, there's no school bus service in Tumbler Ridge.
No. And or Chetwynd.
Yes, there's school bus
Is there?
service for rural kids.
Yeah.
In Chetwynd, yeah.
Not in town.
Councillor Lecter?
Just following through, and Councillor, I believe the school district used to provide that service from
That's my
the north
recollection,
side.
yeah.
I mean, I remember
Yeah.
kids getting on the bus and going down. Now, whether it was an advertised service or whatever, but that's how many students from, I'll use the north side, would get down to South Peace or Central.
Yeah.
So now that is switched, and the city transit system is what picks those children up and moves them from one side to the other where they're going. So they did have the opportunity to jump on those buses.
Yes, they did.
Duncan?
So through your worship, and not to get too far ahead of ourselves, depending on where council would like to go with this, if there is a change, something that we've tried to keep and loop council in on is, we're not entirely sure who all of those users are within the bus. And if council decides to make a change to the program, we would recommend maybe trying to take this out to the public a little bit to indicate that council is considering a change, if that's where council goes, and what that change is, and try to find those other users. We're about 70% we're aware of. There's still 30% of the users that we're not aware of, and we've met with groups and we've met with other people, and so there is a bit of an unknown there, and I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you. Councillor Javetkov?
So my understanding is that we have to make a decision here by the end of November in order to get some relief on these costs for 2020. So have we got a plan for making a recommendation on this, or is this our opportunity to make a motion on what option we choose?
Yeah, I think today now we've, transit we identified as one of the key 4 priorities for 2020's budget, and transit was one of them. And so we directed staff to go out to the community groups to look at what other options and services may be available through them and what their needs were, and so that's what this report is. Now we've got the additional detail from transit in terms of their further recommendations and the implications of that, and we said we were looking for $350,000, I think was the target. So I think whether you want to lock into that today or part of the budget discussions, that's today. So Councillor Jericho?
I'll make a motion that we select option 6 and proceed on that basis, and I can speak to it if we get a seconder.
Thank you. So I've moved that we move to option 6 as presented today, which and do I have a seconder? Councillor Lexstrom. Discontinue Route 3, discontinue all Saturday services, reduce the weekly service hours, and that'll be split daily between the morning peak and the afternoon peak, creating a midday service gap, so there won't be any service in the gap. Remove 1 bus from this fleet and realign that portion of route number 2. Yep, Councillor Lexstrom and then Councillor Javetkov.
Just following through on that motion, I seconded to get it on the floor to have a discussion. I support the option 6, but I think it's going to be extremely important prior to us just saying that's what we're doing. We have the opportunity to go engage the people of Dawson Creek to say, look, this is where we're planning to head. This is our option. This is, we've pursued it. Here's what it means. We want to hear from you. You know, just doing it, and I think that's where we have to land this decision, but I think it's going to be extremely important that we hear from people as well and give them the opportunity to say, hey, look, City Council, this will work, we can do this, or this won't, whatever the information is, I'd like to hear from them. I mean, this will require some people when it comes to, we'll use seniors, for example, making doctor's appointment, maybe looking at the bus schedule a little differently than they have in the past. But I think it can be accommodated. Again, 11.5 riders per hour, as much as I'd like to see that at 100 riders per hour, we may not be having this discussion, but it's a service that we've had for many years in this city that probably one of the more spoken about issues, that when people say, geez, I seen the bus again, it had 1 person or 2 people, what are you doing about it? It's a service. We're trying to amend the service to be more economical in the sense of affordability for the city taxpayer, but it's important that we go out and engage the public on this.
So Mike, and I have no disagreement with that whatsoever, but the only concern I have is if we lock in and put forward a direction now to transit, they've got those obligations to their contractors and the fleet and all of that. So honestly, from my perspective, I would prefer us to say if we're going to go out and engage, let's go out and engage in those top 2 or 3 options that we see moving forward. Because if we've already agreed on an option, we're not communicating. I think the message was we're not engaging. We're communicating what those changes would be, and I think and if we lock into that agreement and that direction, then transit are going to have to start to move on that with their partners, right? That's the added kind of conundrum with this one, is that they've got the contractors that provide the service that now they got to start to communicate with, and I think that's why we need that 6 months. So if we're saying we're going to go out and engage, then I would think we would go out and engage in 2 or 3 options versus just saying, here's what we're doing. Otherwise, they're going to say, you guys have already agreed on what you're doing, right? Anyway, just an observation. Councillor Earl and Councillor Wilbur.
That's fine.
Councillor Wilbur.
Well, thank you. That was something I was going to say, is if we're making this decision and agreeing on option 6, which I think still provides service for those higher ridership times, then we're communicating to the community that this is the decision we made. If we want to get more information from the community, then we shouldn't be making this decision that that's what we're picking today. But I do know in conversations with service groups in the community, they're also providing bus passes for students, the most vulnerable in our seniors, who are using the bus in the morning and in the afternoon, whether it be going to work or volunteer service or going to school. And I know that was in some of the conversation with the school when we went and talked to the school board as well, was that there are service groups in the community who are providing bus passes for the youth to take the city transit. So I think I'm not beyond. I'm fine and comfortable with option 6 and communicating to the community that we've done our very best to keep the service, and this is how we can afford to keep the service for our community. And then the follow-up piece to that communication, I think, is then educating our students, our seniors, and our vulnerable that to plan their day around when the service is available and communicate that out to the service groups who are providing some of those bus passes. So I'm perfectly fine with supporting the motion and communicating to the community that this is the decision we've made, and it's, you know, a tough decision, but we've made it, and we're going to still provide a service, but this is how we can afford to provide it to the community, rather than going out and saying, okay, we want more feedback, blah, 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 and presenting a false hope that it can stay status quo, which it can't. We can't afford it, but we need to have the service because it really affects those weak links in the community when it comes to transportation and availability to services. So I'm fine with saying we've made a decision. I think it lets BC Transit know what we're expecting, and it lets them know what they need to do now moving forward for service. And sometimes we just have to take it in our hands and say, this is the decision we made and this is why. But I think it's the best decision. It works on that budget that we need to work on, but it also continues to provide the service for the people who really need it.
Councillor Javetkov. Sorry.
So I agree. I guess that's my perspective too. I mean, we announced a couple months ago and we did get some feedback. And there has been some work done by administration with some groups. To me, you can delay this and delay it by going for more information. But I think we need to make the decision. I don't disagree with what Councillor Parslow said about the school district buses, you know, but this to me is an ongoing thing, and I think at some point we should discuss this with the school district and see if we can contract those buses. Once they hit Crescent Park and they empty their students, we hire them from that point to take a busload of kids down to wherever they're going. To me, you know, if that's a couple hours of bus service at $200 or $300 an hour, that's could be pretty reasonable. But this is an ongoing thing, and I think to delay the process now, you know, we won't recognize the cost savings here in 2020 at all, and that bothers me. You know, we've got a serious issue. We've, you know, unanimously voted to address it, and I think we have to proceed this way. And there will be, you know, issues that come up, and we may have to, you know, do something as we get information. But at least this way, we made a decision, and we can let the public know what we're doing.
Thank you. Councillor Lexstrom and then Councillor Parslow.
Just following through and for clarification, it's not my intent to go out and engage the public, say, gee, do you like the status quo? Do you like option 1, 2, 3? It is option 6. I mean, I'm leaning option 6, or what Councillor Parslow said. This is an affordability issue for the city of Dawson Creek. You have to look at it. So my thought was, if we make a motion today on option 6, my key is that we go out then and communicate instead of engage. that here's what we've done, here's what we're working on your behalf to provide this service. I'm very hesitant to go back to this, and then we've had this discussion on the school district. If we went back now and they found, moved to option 6, and they found the ability to haul the students in their school buses, then we're going to lose more money, because many of those students have student bus passes today.
That's right.
If we take them out of the system of a revised option 6, and they now start using the school buses, then our revenue, we won't be saving what we think we're saving under this. So we want to maintain, the only option that I would consider the school bus option as is if we had no transit and said, look, you're going to have to look after the students. But the motion is to go with option 6, and part of our revenue and the strength of that revenue is going to come from the school children with their bus passes.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion? And so the steps are that we are moving forward with option 6. Duncan?
So if approved through your worship, we will provide notice to BC Transit, and we will begin communicating that it will be changing.
And the date we want this to be effective is the end of June 2020.
End of school year.
We didn't talk about that, and that was one of the suggestions or recommendations from Rob from BC Transit, was to move to the end of June to allow for that. So I'm just, I've got, Rob's got his hand up, and we need unanimous consent from council to allow the delegation to speak.
I'm good with that.
All those in favor? Okay. Go ahead, Rob.
Thank you. Yeah, I would say target date of June 1st, 2020, not end of June. Just so you have all of June, July, and August, so you have 3 months. And just one other point, we would obviously assist in any of that communication, not the engagement, but the communication of that, and develop any of the tools, work on any sort of public open houses to communicate that. We would obviously support council and staff with that.
The changes would be effective the 1st of June?
You could make them effective the 1st of June.
And so that would impact our school year for the students in June?
Apologies. When's the last day of school?
June 30th?
June 30th. So it would be June 30th.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to say. So June 30th or July 1st.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Wilbur?
And I'm fine with the June 30th, 2020 date. I think, in all fairness, let the kids finish out their school year, and those that the system's not going to work for them have the ability to make other plans. But there's also other programs within the community that run for education and training, and those people are also using the bus service in the morning and the afternoon. So we have to take that into consideration, not just the public school system. There are other entities in the community providing training and education that their clients are also using the bus service in the morning and the afternoon, same as school hours. So I'm personally, in making this decision as a representative of the community, I'm happy with June 30th, 2020.
Thank you. So, motion is we move forward with option 6. It'll be effective, and we'll communicate that to BC Transit, that it'll be changes taking place for the end of June 2020. And we'll move forward with that, and then we will work collaboratively and with administration and BC Transit on a communication plan and strategy and how we're going to inform and communicate the changes with our community. Everybody okay? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Item 8, bylaws. 8.1, revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw in consideration of adoption, 4428, 2019. Councillor Javetkov, Councillor Kemp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8.2, we have the report 19177 from the Deputy Corporate Officer regarding our annual Consumer Price Index amendment bylaw for consideration of first 3 readings. And this is fees and charges, our sewer rates, water resale, and water rates and regulation amendment bylaws. Councillor Parslow, move. Second. Councillor Kemp, discussion. Anything of note or worthy, Duncan, that you want to speak to?
Through your worship, this is a result of the budget discussions leading into 2019 and council's direction to develop a policy for CPI at the end of September and increasing rates annually.
Good, thank you. It was really good information. I thought it was really very well done, so thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried? Thank you. Mayor's business. I was invited to attend the Dawson Creek Medical Advisory Committee. MAC is the monthly meeting by the physicians at the hospital. And I get in about quarterly and give an update on kind of what we're working on and what we've been doing with respect to the hospital and some of those other initiatives. Was very informative and interesting to engage with them, and I always appreciate the invitation to them and with them. Just prior to the Remembrance Day, I attended the Dawson Creek Central School Remembrance Day ceremony. And I just want to speak to that very quickly because these are the middle school kids, kids 7 to 9, I think, in grades 7 to 9. 8 to 9?
No, 7.
Grade 7 is still in elementary school, but anyways.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so they do this event at Central School every year. I've been there, I think, 3 or 4 or 5 years, and you know, I was really impressed with the kids this year. The kids run the program. Their leadership class run the Remembrance Day ceremony. They do all of the components of the ceremony, and I was amazed that the gymnasium and the bleachers were full of the kids. And it wasn't packed that day because it was a bus didn't run that day. So, but through the whole ceremony, the respect that the kids in the ceremony in the gymnasium you could have heard a pin drop throughout the whole hour or hour and a half that we were there, and they did that. And I thought, you know, can be a tough crowd sometimes. Those 13, 14, 15-year-old kids, they were amazing how well behaved they were, in my view, and how respectful they were of the ceremony, and I really appreciated it, and I wanted to mention that. Also, we attended the Legion ceremony at Mercer Hall this year with the changes to Onchaga Hall. I handed out my calendar for my meetings to Calgary, and I went, as I mentioned earlier, I try to get down to Calgary about 3 or 4 times a year, and just always working and making sure we stay in contact with industry, and Air Liquide was a really important one this time. So I was down on Monday and Tuesday. I flew down Sunday night, and so I spent Monday. I met with a company. It's called Straight Training Communications. They've developed a Pipeline 101 program, training program for 7 days, and they did it in Northwest Alberta. Triple J were the prime company involved in it, and so I talked to the principal of Triple J, and they were really anxious to try to develop some kind of a process like that here, a training program for in their region. And so these are the guys that put it on, and with Pembina and a bunch of companies. And so I'm looking to try to develop that with Triple J here and with the companies. And so I met with Pembina, I met with TransCanada, I met with Verizon and Canada Art, Birchcliff and Pacific Cambrium. All thought it was really a great idea, and they're really looking for a way to develop it. And I met with Encana on Monday afternoon, the senior guys from Encana, and talked about this announcement, and we raised it at the last meeting where we would like to invite them to council to have a presentation on the announcement of Encana leaving Canada. And so what they've described is, and through them, is Encana are not leaving Canada. Encana have changed their name in the U.S. as an initiative for them to raise capital, investment capital in the States. And that's the focus of this name change. They're staying in Canada. They're staying within their operations in Canada, in both the Northeast and Northwest Alberta. Their assets here are what are driving some of their strongest results right now for them. They're really engaged in that and have no change. There's nobody leaving their head offices in Calgary that are moving to the States. The initiative is about raising capital in the States for their investments in the Permian, Eagle Ford, and that New Gold or New whatever the other company is. So they are going to come, and they said they'd be here in the new year, the senior guys that I met with, and they'll come and do a presentation to council. Councillor Jabecka?
Is there a name change for here then?
No, no. It relates to their U.S. operations, and raising capital in the U.S. is the message they gave to me. But anyway, they said they'd be more than happy to come and do a presentation to council, and in fact, they're bringing things are picking up now in the spot price of natural gas, and they're bringing another rig in to do some more work. So anyway, I just thought that was really good kind of information, and I think it'd be very helpful if they come and do that presentation. As I say, I met with Pembina and Verizon and TransCanada about their operations and the importance of them here, along with all of them. And I met with PEMP TransCanada over there, starting the coastal, obviously, GasLink project, and they're going to build a major compressor station out here, the Wild, I think it is, out at Groundbridge. And it'll be a major project that they'll build. They'll have 400 or 500 people on it for a fair length of time. It's a pretty significant build. Their message to me was, do you want us to leverage them in the camps, or do you want them in our community? Couldn't have emphasized enough how much I think it's important for them to be residing, those employees to be working in the region, to be living in our community where they can, renting our accommodations, living in the hotels, and supporting our local community. And that message is really important to me, and they get it. Part of the issue for them is also because they're working out there that now they got their workers traveling on the roads and all of that stuff and things, but they really got the message, and they're very appreciative of the fact that we reached out to them in that regard. And Brett met with Birchcliff as well, because they haven't had much of Birchcliff. Mainly operate over in Bonanza, Baytree, and don't have, but they got a ton of workers here. A ton of their people that work for Birchcliff live in Dawson Creek, and so anyway, it's a good day and a half, busy but very productive, and always appreciate getting the opportunity to meet with them.
Good. Thank you very much.
And updated in Canada, they did absolutely say they'd be here early in the new year, and they'll come and do an update and a presentation to council. I attended the 75th anniversary of the Dawson Creek Elks Lodge, and the Royal Purple now are amalgamated, operating under the one Elks Lodge now, with the decline in the number of members in the Elks Lodge and the Royal Purple. Now they have one, but they had the national exalted ruler from Canada, was from Ontario, was here, and his wife, but it was a really good night, and I really appreciate seeing some of those long-term residents of our community that have been real strong volunteers over the years, and really appreciated them being here. I did an interview with Business View magazine. They're a magazine that's a national magazine that they always look for opportunities to promote and do messages on communities across Canada, and so I did that last Thursday. Attended the 18 Wheels of Christmas campaign on the weekend. At Rosenau and Chris staff do such a great job of raising food for the food banks and the Salvation Army and all of the various ones that are St. Mark's Church, I think, and all of them that are involved in it, and really appreciated the opportunity to participate a little bit and help raise some funds for the local community. New business, Jenny's Barbecue opened up in the Silverado, and there's an entrepreneur, Jenny's Meats, lady from the Philippines, moved into town and just opened her up her store in the meat store at the farmers or the market on 8th Street, and now has taken over the restaurant at the Silverado, and it's so good to see that entrepreneur, hard work, building community, and so I was there for her grand opening. I reached out to Diane again from Treaty 8 on the issue that was before council 2 weeks or a month ago, and Diane has left Treaty 8. She's going back to West Soto as their I think taking on the responsibility of the Twin Sisters Nursery, and so I don't know who the replacement is, but I'll stay on that. And there was, I don't know if we had any other delegation requests today that we had to deal with. And I put in front of council the South Peace Economic Development request funding, and so each year through the Peace River Regional District, we used to have the South Peace Economic Development Commission, was made up of the South Peace, and the North Peace had theirs, and Fort St. John were off to the side, and it's kind of morphed into now we all have one bucket, and everybody puts forward initiatives of funding ideas or economic initiatives that we want to bring forward. So I've brought forward in the past 3 or 4 years the Business to Business Expo that's put on by through Community Futures. We always receive $5,000 in sponsor our airport marketing funding from there. We put $7,500, the South Peace guys, into the Health Society to help with some of the administration function that the society needs for buying computers and paying some travel expenses for their members. $7,500 for the Chetwynd, Tumbler Ridge, and Dawson Creek Love Northern BC. And then $50 that we plopped into the Dawson Creek and District Exhibition Ground. I did that last year. I saw the different North Peace Fair and different organizations putting funding, so we put that forward as an initiative to try to help the Exhibition Association with some of those grant capital programs that they do outside of just stuff that we do or they do. And so we got the support from the economic development through the regional district last year for that as well. And so I put those 5 initiatives forward. And the other one that we will do off to the side as well is the 100 grand for the tourism for the hockey. And I'll meet with Barry and Dustin this week to get a letter forward to the RD for those. So ask, I guess, at this point if I can get a motion to support those going forward to the regional district. Councillor Parslow, second. Councillor Javetkov. Any discussion on those or any other items? Councillor Earl?
So just a couple things. With respect to the business to business, that did end up getting canceled this year. Is that just they're canceling it one-off, or is it going to be discontinued moving forward?
I don't know. I know that it was canceled this year just because of a lack of registration, but hopefully it's one that we'll see it revamp. And so the regional district guys, I know that they've been very supportive of it and seeing it and like the idea of sponsoring it. And like the North piece, Fort St. John do the women's 100.
Spark.
Yeah.
Smart. What is it?
Spark. Yeah.
Conference, and they get some funding through that. So, and the process here, people, the various communities can choose to be a part of these or not. Tumbler Ridge Geopark, the museum in Tumbler Ridge, the Gotta Go program that Karen Gooding's on the highway was. So there's probably 30 or 40 different initiatives. These are just the 4 or 5 that I brought forward on behalf of us at the board.
Okay. And so just another quick follow-up with respect to the Regional Airport Marketing Initiative. I would be interested, now that we've got a new provider in, if we're going to be providing $5,000 in marketing support, I'd be interested to see what that initiative has entailed in the past and what we feel we've gotten from it, and if our current provider thinks they could maybe provide some insight so that we can leverage that $5,000 to a better effect, and how we can collaborate to make sure we're getting the most bang for our buck.
Yeah, this was a way to me for the regional South Peace communities to support the marketing of the Dawson Creek and District Airport, and it wasn't to a specific initiative. And it was really, honestly, where we would find some advertising or promotions for certain events at the airport, or just that pure message around Fly Local was all it was, Jeremy. It wasn't a strategic initiative that we identified that we were doing.
Okay.
Further comments, questions?
We have a motion.
Yep, I was just going to see if...
I have another question not related to the
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Go ahead.
Just a couple of things. So I understood you to say that Encana, for its Canadian operations, retains that title.
That's my understanding.
Okay. Air Liquide.
Yes?
2 reasons for their current situation. One is the bit of a hiatus in the drilling program. But the other point, technology. Did I hear you correct that there's also less nitrogen used for fracking than it used to be, a new technology?
It's cheaper to use water sand than it is nitrogen. And so that's why the industry will use the water sand versus nitrogen. And that's what they told me.
Yeah.
And so Shell were the big customer for them. And when Shell were doing a bunch of the development in their assets out in Groundbirch. But they've really declined the development of it and waiting to build of LNG Canada. So it just really caused a significant decline in the sale of liquid nitrogen for Air Liquide.
Yeah. So there is a bit of a technology change as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the last item, Solid Waste Committee. So we raised this at the last meeting in terms of the new committee that we've got going to revamp the solid waste management plan. A big piece of what that solid waste of landfills and all of that is the ICI, the industrial contamination products like building materials and all of that. And so we talked to Duncan and Kevin a little bit about this, and so we're going to get Celtic Homes, Carl Chandler is going to sit on it because he does a whole whack of that kind of stuff. And we thought that'd be a real good input into the committee to give. It's about 30 or 40% of the landfill volume is that ICI. It's a big part of it, building materials, concrete, and all of that stuff. So anyway, Carl's agreed to sit on it. So I wanted to bring that back to council. Do we need that by way of a motion or
Not
just
through your worship. Worship, Council directed you to look after
Okay.
it last meeting.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mayor's business? Councillor Lexton?
Just a quick one, and it's not on anything you put forward here. I know that when it comes to the regional district, we talked about our planning area and our engagement, what we were going to do with that for the coming year. A little off base here today, but have we reached out or set up meetings to coordinate those boundaries yet? I'm just curious where we're at.
No, so through your worship, we have not, and I had to go back and take a look at the resolution that was previously passed, because I believed it was linked into the sub-regional discretion as well, and so I went back and took a look, and looks like we can proceed forward, although we don't actually have an area defined. Staff can proceed to meet with the RD, and we have received requests from staff at the RD to meet.
And we got a meeting with them on Wednesdays, and we could talk about it at that point as well.
Okay, I just think it's important we move on that.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Consent calendar. Councillor Parslow, second. Councillor Earl, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Any comments on any of the items? Strategic priorities?
Nothing to update, your worship.
Thank you. Media? Thank you. Committee of the whole, do you want to take a quick, no, we'll go, eh? Are you guys okay to go? Yeah. Committee of the whole, so we'll, 14-1, we have the staff sergeant, and I see Damon's in the crowd. Welcome. Good morning.
Councillors. Thank you for having me. You can certainly take a break if you want.
No. Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break, yeah. And we've been going a while.
I'm sitting here going, I can do
He's the only guy. The whole, and we have our staff sergeant. Damon, welcome.
Thank you.
Good to have you here.
Yes, it's good to be here. It's been a while since I've sat in this chair, so. So I'll get right started. I'm going to make a change to my policing reports that I give you every month, and what I wanted to add to it is my policing priorities, or our strategic priorities. It's kind of our meat and potatoes of what we do, where we're focusing some of our resources, so it's important that I give you an update every month on that. I'm not going to give you a report this month, because I'm still going to prepare how I'm going to report that to you, but moving forward, there will be reports on where we are with our strategic priorities and if I'm meeting the targets that were set at the beginning of the year. So just to refresh your memory on what our priorities are, they were reduction of property crime, focusing on organized crime, a reduction in mental health calls, and organizational excellence, which is making sure that my members have the training and the expertise to serve the community of Dawson Creek. So I'll move on to resources for the detachment. For the period of October, and this policing report covers the period of October for 2019. For the period of October 2019, we didn't have any transfers. We presently have no hard vacancies, and in fact, we're actually surplus to establishment by one position. So we have one extra position while we're waiting for a member to sell their house and move on to New Brunswick, because where they're going. I don't get to say that very often, so I'm going to say it a couple times. We have no hard vacancies, and we're surplus to establishment by one.
What's the next paragraph?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
So currently, we do have 9 soft vacancies. So if you remember, soft vacancies, the position is filled, but the member's not able to report for duty at this time. And to break that down for you, I have 4 on maternity and paternity leave, 3 on sick or injured leave, and 2 on light or modified duties. So the members that are light or modified duties are working in the office on modified duties. They're just not on the road. I do anticipate, and that is high. That's a pretty high number for having soft vacancies. That's probably the highest I've seen it. But the good thing about those is that they're temporary and they're not forever, and they're gonna come back to work. So I do anticipate that between at least two, but up to 4 of those members will be returning to full operational duties by the end of the year. So within the next 5 weeks, I expect at least 2 back, if not up to 4. One of our members will be transitioning into a provincial traffic services. So we have a provincial traffic services unit based out of here, based out of Dawson Creek. One of our members will be moving into that section. His replacement is a recruit, and they'll be arriving in mid-January. He's not leaving until the recruit is here. So we're not going to run into that situation again where we have released members, but we haven't got the replacements. One of our members is in the process of preparing to transfer to Prince George. His replacement's a 4-year member coming out of Chilliwack. And again, I anticipate that member's going to be here in mid-January as well. So my member's not going to be allowed to leave until his replacement is here also. I believe that Sergeant Homadic filled you in. His worship was already aware, but our establishment has been increased by 2 positions. Has it been shared with the council, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have 29 members, we did have 29 members, now we're 31. So our provincial business line has received 2 more members. So our provincial city funds 25 positions, the province funds 4 positions, but it's now 6. So we have a total of 31 police officers now. Those positions, those new positions are going to be recruits. I expect them coming in January, February sometime. And those positions will be going to front line to general duty. So the intent is that they're going to share the foul load and increase the officer presence within the city. So they're going to be going to our frontline watches. And just to let the council know, I am conducting a review currently of our organizational chart to ensure that personnel resources are adequately staffed. So that may involve shuffling of some of my internal resources and where I have members presently assigned. And as I look into that and make sure that we have resources where we need them, I'll report to you on what I'm doing with them. So right now I'm just looking into make sure that we have them in the right place. Is there any questions at all on resources before I move on? Or
Councillor Earl?
I noticed last week that coming down from the provincial government, the BCMP is looking at a budgetary shortfall of $10 million, and that the cuts they're going to make are going to affect the provincial business line that covers, it says here, the cost of 2,600 officers in small detachments that police small communities or municipalities. Now, I don't know if we qualify as a small municipality, and I assume if they've just increased our allotment by 2 officers that we're not slated for any reductions. And I apologize if this is kind of a preliminary question, but if you hear anything, I assume you'll let us know.
Yeah, I don't anticipate that affecting Dawson Creek at all.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lexham, sorry.
Generally, and thank you. So the 9 soft vacancies, always a concern for any detachment, not just Dawson Creeks, and some are returning. We're working towards, trying to find a solution, working with the RCMP to say, look, soft vacancies are a concern for us. If we have, I'll use just the city contingent of 25 members, I'm not sure how many of those soft vacancies are from the 25. But what are your thoughts? Are you hearing anything? Are you working with certainly the senior members of the RCMP to say, look, we have nurses that come in if we're short, we have doctors that come in, huge priority, the safety of the community. Is there a floating group of RCMP officers that are being looked at to be able to fill these soft vacancies for the short term, that whether people are on maternity or paternity or illness, whatever it would be? Maybe your thoughts on that again.
So E-Division North District is in the process of establishing a relief team. I'm not entirely sure how many members, but it's in the range of 20 members for a relief team, so we can call them and bring them in. That's a good thing, because if I need more members for a period of time, I can call the relief team members in, and if they're available, they'll be able to come to Dawson Creek. What we have to consider, though, is that they need a place to stay. They're going to be on full accommodations, full meals and incidentals. So I may be putting that member or members in hotels and on full meals and incidentals during their time that they're here. So I'm looking at probably $400 a day per member that I bring in here. So there is members available for me to bring in. There's going to be a cost associated to that. So.
Okay. And just one quick follow-up. Out of the 9 soft vacancies, I'm guessing there'd be a mix between city-funded members, provincial-funded members. Is there a policy that says, look, if a community-funded member is off, it'll be filled with a provincial member? Do you have that ability?
There's not. I have the ability to move members where at my discretion.
Okay.
So I try to do it fairly. Whereas about 75% of the members are city and 25 are provincial. So I try to keep 75% of the members that are off on the city side and 25% on the provincial side. Keeping in mind that members that are off duty on the municipal side, you're not being billed for, right? After 30 days.
Yeah.
So though the city has budgeted for those members, you're not being billed for those members that aren't reporting for work after 30 days. So.
Okay. Thank you.
So if the city's requesting that I fill the positions, and from the provincial side, I can certainly fill those positions, but.
No, I'm just suggesting there was a significant public outcry when we discussed the potential of decreasing our city-funded staff, yet we're substantially lower than the decrease we were talking about, I would suggest today, than you know, the outcry we heard last year. So this has got to be a concern for the residents too.
Yep. Yeah. So nine is high, abnormally high. But I think that we have to always plan for vacancies.
Yeah.
I don't know what the acceptable number is personally for police officers or otherwise, but 9 is abnormally high, and it's not going to be there very long, I don't expect. So.
All right.
If there's nothing else, then I'll move on.
Thank you.
So I'll move on to crime trends. So far, as of October 31st, I should say, we've had a total of 8,042 calls. 79% of those calls within the city and 21% in the rural area. Speaking to the city, relatively we've had the same amount of calls this year that we did last year. We're about 100 calls short, but not worth mentioning really. On the rural side, we've seen a reduction of calls for service by 6%. We've seen some pretty large decreases in property crime over the last month. Again, my report compares the month of October to the month before it, so the month of September. For the month of October, we saw a 72% reduction in auto theft, 60% reduction in theft from vehicles, 61% reduction in break-and-enters to residents, a 67% in break-and-enters to businesses. So those are some significant reductions in property crime in Dawson Creek. And I attribute that largely due to the arrests that have been made recently. So as we're making these arrests of people that are involved in property crime, we're identifying the network of people that are involved in property crime, and allows us not only to arrest them and monitor them, but keep tabs on them from now on. So we're putting them in jail, but when they're getting out of jail, we also know who they are now. So we're monitoring them moving forward. We have seen there were some increases in persons crimes between September and October, and I'll bring your attention to the most alarming one, which is a 300% increase in sexual assaults. So September, we actually had 0 sexual assaults, and for October, I had reported on my police report that we had 3, so an increase of 300%. Even 3 sexual assaults in Dawson Creek for 1 month was somewhat concerning, so I looked into those files, and what I found is that they aren't actually sexual assaults that occurred in Dawson Creek. They occurred somewhere else, and the detachments have sent us an assistance request to help them out. So for a witness that may live here in Dawson Creek, we open a file and we take a statement for them and we send it to them to deal with it. So I've reported 3 sexual assaults in October for Dawson Creek, but it's not actually sex assaults that have occurred in Dawson Creek. Those are assistance files that we've opened to help other detachments for witnesses that live here in Dawson Creek. So what I'm saying is we don't have a predator in Dawson Creek, and these are not sex assaults that are occurring within the city of Dawson Creek. Just to sum up in closing, I wanted to alert you or just touch on 2 initiatives that we have going on in Dawson Creek. And I think, again, Sergeant Harmandic brought it to your attention last visit was the SPOT initiative. So with property crime in Dawson Creek, I haven't actually looked at every single file and counted, but I can estimate based on my knowledge of the files that we're taking in that at least 95% of the calls that we're getting for theft from vehicles are from vehicles that are left unsecured. And a lot of times the vehicles are left unsecured, there's valuables left in plain sight, so a wallet or a purse or a computer or a cell phone left on the dash, and the vehicle's left unlocked overnight, and then that vehicle subsequently gets broken into and the possessions, the valuables get stolen. So property crime accounts for half of all the calls we get here in Dawson Creek. It's a concern for us, and it's more concerning that by locking our doors we could stop that from happening. Since I've been here for the last year and a half, I recall only 1 or 2 files in which a window was broken in order to gain access to a vehicle. So what we're looking to do is change the behavior in town here, and we're not small towns. I'm from small town Saskatchewan, so we might get away with unlocking or leaving our doors unlocked there, but we're not in small town Saskatchewan, and I think we need to change the behavior here and the thinking, and we need to start locking our doors. By doing that, we'll significantly reduce the amount of property calls that we're getting here in Dawson Creek. And then the second initiative I want to bring your attention is the one that you're already aware of, is the bait card program. We do continue to use it. The bait card is actually out in Dawson Creek right now, and it's placed strategically. It's continued to prove to be very successful for Dawson Creek. So it was about a year ago that we introduced the bait card program here in Dawson Creek. And since that time, we've seen huge reductions in vehicle thefts within the city of Dawson Creek. So down just in the last month, 72%. But over the last year, if I were to look at it, I would say it's down between 20 and 40%. I'll do a report for you at the end of the year, but significantly down from last year. And that can mainly be attributed to the bait card program. Again, it doesn't just allow us to arrest the people that are in possession of stolen vehicles, but it's allowing us to identify the network of people that are doing it. And so we're putting those people in jail, and when they're out of jail, we're able to monitor them. Pending any questions, that completes my policing report for you today.
Thank you. Councillor Lexon?
Just one follow-up, and you mentioned the spotted on the program. So your comments about only a couple of windows having been broke in your time here, not that that's a bad thing, but what concerns me is the cost. I mean, we all pay as taxpayers for this, and the thought of going out to somebody who's left their vehicle unlocked and having to have you attend and deal with it. Is there the ability for levies, for you guys to issue levies, or is that something we have to look at as a city? Going there because somebody left their vehicle unlocked and gee, they got their phone stolen out of it is not an RCMP issue. That's an issue for the individual, I would suggest.
Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying. I've never heard of that. I've heard of fines for false alarms. That was something that probably the council would have to look into, so.
Okay. So it's concerning for the people that are legitimately looking after things that they're now paying for people that don't pay attention, so. Okay.
Thank you. Any further questions? Keenan, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Good to have you back and good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. So we're going to take a 20-minute break for lunch, and then we'll come back and committee of the whole at the conclusion of lunch. Hi, everybody here. Our Marlon, you're good to go. And we're back into committee of the whole, and we have a corporate officer. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We do have one of those.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me. Within my committee of the whole report, I want to first start with the information about the Tourism Advisory Committee. That's the main purpose of the report. I provided a brief history of it, and I'm going to give you a quick summary. The Tourism Advisory Committee was formed in 2016 to assist with the transition from a regional model with Northern BC Tourism to a model that was more focused on the city of Dawson Creek. Through this process, an RFP was posted, and contrary to the recommendation of the Tourism Advisory Committee, Council selected Spectra Venue Management excuse me, and the leadership of Ryan McIver as the new management company for Tourism Dawson Creek. This decision was made in August of 2017, and since that time, any meetings of the Advisory Committee were put on hold in order to allow Spectra Venue Management to transition into their new role. Over the last 2 years, Spectra has provided regular reporting to Council with regards to their new role with Tourism Dawson Creek. And I'm now looking for Council direction as to the future role of the Advisory Committee, and if you feel if there's a need for additional guidance or oversight. So with that, I'm just going to put it out there to Council if there's any discussion or questions, comments, just so I can get some direction on where we go from here.
Thank you. And I think that's a great overview of it. And at the time when we put the Tourism Advisory Committee together and led by, I think, Councillor Rogers at the time. And I think we've evolved a bit in terms of that couple-year period and why and what we were, in my view anyway, driving the desire to have the Tourism Advisory Committee is a little different today, and as is the kind of the focus of what we're doing in tourism in lots of ways. So anyway, I'll kind of leave it at that and throw it to Council. Councillor Parslow?
Well, my view, in light of decisions that we've made in our strategic plan, I see no need for this advisory committee, because if the council direction is successful, there will de facto be an advisory group. I'm being careful what I say here, but you know what I mean. So I think you get what I'm talking about. Good. So I think we have no need for this advisory committee, because I think through other actions, if they're successful, there de facto would be one.
Thank you. Duncan?
So through your worship too, and part of the reason of putting this on the committee of the whole is this is something the previous council dealt with, fairly significant discussion and a lot of information. We've had some changes, and really, so this is that opportunity to get the information out there before you see the report. The report will be coming forward probably even as soon as the next meeting, but really want to give everybody an opportunity to kind of understand why and what this was before you see that report, and you'll see that more often in our committee the whole. We try to get a lot of information out there before the report.
Thank you. Any other comments from anyone? Do you know, I think honestly, and there's one aspect to this that it hit me at the RD one day when we were talking about some things in the Peaceful Regional District, and Tumbler Ridge working away on a whole bunch of initiatives they do, and I think they've done a great job in that community with the museum, the paleontology, all of that stuff, and Chetwynd doing their things with the chainsaw carving and all of that stuff, and some initiatives for tourism. And so I'm not sure now with this hockey stuff has really demonstrated that collaborative regional. I'm not sure that maybe that's not an opportunity for us to look at this at even a bigger regional model and a regional perspective to say, could we be more effective with them limited dollars and limited money that we all have with respect to how we view tourism, components around that, and how we could be maybe even more effective in a collaborative approach of not only marketing ourselves with that kind of parochial lens about our communities, but also the regional one. I'm going to talk to the other mayors about that, because I think there's some Poos and Tumbler and Chetwynd and all of us in the southeast have all got Taylor with the goal panning championships and Fort St. John the high on ice. So anyway, I just think there's some perhaps some regional collaboration for tourism that might be more beneficial. Anyway, Brenda, there you go. Councillor Lexner?
Just to follow up, so as I understand, the committee is still in place?
It's been on hold. It hasn't met for almost 2 years.
Okay. Now, are we looking, Brenda, and I look to you, are we looking to say, look, we're done with the committee, or we're not done with the committee, or are we going to leave it go for, I get the feeling we're looking for some kind of direction from council that says, look, thank you for the work you've done, end the story, or, gee, keep doing the work.
Well, the initial transition, the most important mandate of the committee was to transition into this new role, and I believe that's taken place, and there is regular reporting, so it's up to council if they felt there was additional oversight needed, but a staff report was going to recommend that there's no need for the committee moving ahead.
And so I think at this stage we're, based on council, I don't think we've got any sense that council are saying, yeah, let's continue to go with it. I think I'm hearing we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah. Do we need a motion to that effect?
No, this is committee of the whole,
Yeah.
no motions, but just overall sense, and I'll just carry on as I was planning. It'll come to the next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
The other item I wanted to bring up that I included in my report was in regards to the conflict of interest. The role of councillors as board members with various community organizations, and just to provide the clarification as to when a conflict of interest may arise. So basically, if a councillor is appointed through a council resolution onto a board of directors for a community society, then they are in that role as a representative of the city. And any matters that would come before council with regards to that society would not put them in a conflict of interest. Alternatively, if a councillor is a director of a community committee or society only through their own personal interest, then their role is to act on the best interests of that particular society. This would then put them in a conflict of interest if any matter came before council. So that should provide a bit of clarity on that. So in future, I just want to make sure council's aware that they should look at the organizations that they are on the board of directors for. And it's up to them to declare their own conflict of interest.
But by being involved in a potential conflict, by not declaring that, it could impact the overall impact to council if a decision is made that could be challenged because somebody is considered to be in a conflict that didn't declare it. Councillor Parslow?
Yeah, and another big area apart from boards and organisations is labour relations. I have a conflict of interest as it relates to a union that the city's engaged in because of a daughter being a member of that union.
No.
But there's different stages. I can be, that maybe Brenda may want to explore that, but I mean, if we're making decisions around a collective agreement, I believe I'm in a conflict. But how about if we are setting direction to our bargaining committee? Am I in conflict? In other words, we're not ratifying an agreement. I'm clear about that, but not so clear around setting a framework for bargaining. Am I in a conflict?
Through your worship.
No.
Sorry.
My initial thought is if it's a decision that's a big picture decision, then it's not a conflict of interest. But if it's a direct pecuniary interest, if it affects you directly, then it is. And if you need, my recommendation definitely would be to go get legal advice if you're really concerned and unsure. Because I'm not a lawyer, but that's just my suggestion.
I did miss the first part of what you said. I mean, if I direct pecuniary advantage, I understand that, but for a daughter's direct pecuniary advantage, I would also believe I'm in conflict.
I'm not sure if that would be, unless your finances are so directly related. That's when I would suggest that you'd go seek legal advice on that, unless you wanted to just declare conflict due to perception.
Well, I have read things, you know, about municipalities in this province that would, you know, where decision of council has been challenged because somebody's daughter and I wouldn't want to do anything that jeopardizes, puts the council in that position. You know?
So through your worship, before that question is in front of council, we can make sure we have an answer for that, but where Brenda is going in general, when you're dealing with individuals, it's a little different than when you're dealing with the broader scope, right? A councillor, and there's a lot of legislation in this one, especially when it comes to development. You know, council can be impacted by a multifamily zoning, et cetera, and this is in larger centers. It starts kind of playing out as far as how many people are impacted. Is it just you individually because your house is next to it? Is it 10 people, 20, a whole community? And so there's some thresholds and some levels, but before we get to that discussion, we can make sure we have an answer for you.
Ours, I think, to me, is more, we have a small community where we're involved in, all of us involved in lots of different things as organizations that we volunteer or are director of. And is that then being a director, being a member with that organization, group, or society, creating us where we create a conflict with our role as a voting member at this board? And that usually tends to be the, right? Duncan?
And further to your point, you know, one that's questioned and discussed a lot is when you have someone that's maybe involved in real estate on a council making land decisions, right? And obviously they can make some of those decisions, and that's a lot of discussion as well. So interesting stuff, but we'll have you an answer.
Okay. Thank you.
And on a lighter note, I have our community awards are up for voting, and it's closing tomorrow.
Oh, good.
So anyone can still go online and vote through the city's website. And lastly, I just want to introduce, we have a new casual staff person, Julianne Selmeyer. Is she here? Did she?
They put her to work.
We had we had our casual Terry filling in for Melissa, who is away on maternity leave, so we needed to make a new hire, and we're really happy with Julianne. So I just wanted to introduce her.
Good. Thank you, Brenda. Any questions further? Councillor Earl?
Just a note on the transit election day ridership. Us giving away free transit on election day doesn't seem to have made a noticeable increase in the ridership, and I don't know what as well intentioned as it is it, and as much as I think there's symbolic value in us encouraging democratic participation, it doesn't seem to be bearing much fruit in the way of increased voter turnout or people using transit to access polling anyway. Just one note I noted.
With that, elections are held on a Saturday, so moving forward, that would
Yeah, it's not an issue. All right. Problem solved.
Glad you're paying attention.
That's why I voted against it.
Oh, no, you didn't.
The matter that he raised, not the issue we discussed this morning.
Anything further, Brenda? Thank you. Thank you, Brenda. Next, we have 14.3. We have a report from our Chief Financial Officer. Good morning, or good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And I just want to say just a short version here. We are currently working on the 2020 budget. How the managers already provided to us their review of the original 2020 numbers, so we managed to combine both for operational and capital projects. So we are now just refining to get ready for the first draft meeting on December 16. We had our first public consultation. Unfortunately, only 2 residents show up on this consultation. However, we also put in place the survey, and we're going to present the results on December 16, but we had 194 people that answered the survey. So I think it was a good number. Like I said, first meeting on draft 1 is going to be on December 16. Regarding to the audit, as it was on the letters, we got no major weakness found by the auditors. Went very smoothly, the interim audit, and we are getting ready now for the year end. That's gonna be by February. And we have a new customer service clerk, Christine Simlik. She's been working a couple of years, 7 years with the city, and she worked as casual and desk clerk in other areas. So we want to welcome her. And I'm good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions for our Chief Financial Officer? Great job, as usual. Nice to have you here today.
Thank you for having me here.
14.4, we have, apparently we have a general manager of community services.
We do. We have one of those too.
I just have always been wanting to say that.
You're gonna give him middle child syndrome.
Middle child syndrome.
Good afternoon, Your Worship. Pleasure to be here.
Good afternoon.
Members of Council. I'll start with parks. Really, for the most part, we're switching gears. We have laid off our seasonal staff. Although we did keep a couple on a little later this year. You may have noticed we've replaced some of our downtown trees that are missing. I think we ended up replacing about 8 of those. Parks have been overseeded. They've been aerated. We've moved soccer goal mouths. We've overseeded. Flower beds have been prepped. Roses have been wrapped. Those sorts of things. Equipment has been put away. Just briefly on the, there has been some conversation about the dog park and the relationship. We did have an opportunity to meet with and speak with Chad Anderson, and to me, I get the sense that we're working things out. People on both sides of the coin are happy with the way things are going. I've seen some great comments on Facebook lately about the park, so cautiously optimistic that will go ahead without any glitches. Excuse me. I think earlier this year I spoke just briefly about a fixed program, which is our facility maintenance and asset management program. We're just about, it's been installed. Devon has been using it at the water treatment plant. We use it in the pool. We've just about had it complete installation rather of our facilities and parks. And this will be a really useful tool in terms of tracking our maintenance and understanding life cycles of our equipment, and will really inform our operating and our capital budgets going forward. So pretty excited to see that complete. At the end of the day, we'll be able to use that in any one of our civic facilities. It'll be a very useful tool. I did talk, I think, in my last committee of the whole report about our arenas. We did have some challenges this year with our ice plant startup, and even at the curling rink when they went to start, we had some challenges. But pleased to report that all 3 buildings are up and operating and hosting tournaments and bonspiels as we speak. Train refrigeration has been up and completed their annual service on the ice plants, and we've got a good, clean bill of health there. We are in the process of training and hiring a number of new arena attendants, which will really provide some redundancies and some coverage when we have our full-time staff on vacation leave or sick leave, and trying to mitigate and lower some of our overtime costs. Our capital plans are in pretty good shape. I think there will only be 2 projects that will be carried over into 2020. One is the RCMP camera upgrades, and actually we're well on the way. I hope to have the tender specifications complete in the next couple of weeks, and we may even advertise that before Christmas. The other carryover will be the art gallery. They've been to speak with council a number of times this year. They were successful in getting a couple of grants, but we're going to wait to pull the trigger on the work until the new year, so we'll carry over our $50,000 contribution into the next year. In terms of other capital, I think we are complete or very close to complete in most areas, and in pretty good shape. And I think most of our projects this year will come in under budget, so happy to report that. In terms of recreation, we had a good summer. The weather wasn't fantastic for our spring play in the parks, but we had good turnout. We had 200 residents participate in Spring Park and Play and National Health and Fitness Day. And we actually had a partnership with Participaction. We received $1,000 in the form of a grant for people to come out and participate in Zumba and yoga and swing dance lessons. So pretty exciting. For our second year, Shell has come to the table and hosted our Shell Summer in the Park, which is a bi-weekly event that takes place on a number of our parks throughout the community. Good events. Kids participate in hiking and geocaching and disc golf, and we were able to move those programs around to a number of different facilities in the community. We hosted 11 summer camps this year for ages 2 to 16 years old, and we collaborated with the South Peace Junior Soccer Association, Farmington Fairways, and the Dawson Creek Watershed Society. So kids got an opportunity to really go and participate in different environments. Our community registration, which took place last summer in conjunction with the Summer in the Park, the community registration was enhanced somewhat in that the school district BCGEU teachers and Shell combined hosted a free barbecue to everyone who showed up. So I think we got a few more bodies out for that particular event. Canada's Healthy Workplace Month has been a part of our organization since 2008, and it's aimed at increasing awareness of workplace health and wellness, healthy lifestyles. Programming this year, and you've probably seen some of this, we included decorating offices in our Halloween theme, a Halloween gingerbread house competition, and things like Jersey Day, where people come out with their hockey jerseys, what have you. We issue staff members rec passes throughout this month, and there were a total of 92 passes utilized. So it's really encouraging our staff to get out and be healthy and get away from the desk and take part in some physical activity. O'Brien School, as you know, our lease continues there, and it is certainly our hotspot for activities. And as of November 8th. This year we've already hosted 47 birthday parties, so pretty popular, and with parents bringing their kids out. Adult pickleball, adult soccer, and volleyball have really grown in their numbers, and actually the adult volleyball has doubled in attendance, so we've scheduled a second night out for that particular event. Borak Construction continues to sponsor wellness community events, including adult yoga and family gym. We talked, I've talked about the fact we're currently working with 2 outside agencies to provide after-school programming. So we worked with School District 59 to deliver the after-school sport and art initiative program. That is well underway, and we also received $1,000 from the BCRPA to run the Back to Basics program, where children learn basic skills such as sewing, treating a wound, woodworking, crocheting, and more. The one thing about the school district program, it's fully funded. Council received that report earlier this year, so well underway, and we're seeing some good success. Sport Fields meeting took place November 12th. It was an opportunity to review the past season, start talking about the new season. We certainly brought we talked a little bit about the CPI increases, which Council talked about a little bit earlier today, so there won't be any shocks to the system there. Of note, I understand the adult and youth soccer have combined the administration portion, so good synergies there, I think, for both groups. In terms of the arenas and activities, we just hosted our first hockey tournament November 7th through 10th. Drop-in skating continues to be very popular. We've got a Learn and Go skating program. As you know, the World Junior A Challenge is coming up, and for 2 of the days, there's a concert. Johnny Reid is playing at the Encana. We'll actually have a couple hockey teams in our arenas in the Kin and the Memorial, and have an opportunity to see some practices and some legacy piece in there. Staff have been working with Engage Sport North to host National Coaching Certification Program for local coaches in the area here. We were supposed to host one, and I think it was last weekend, and I think we fell short of the numbers, but they're already planning for another spring event, and I think it's a good opportunity to bring those types of events into the city here. Numbers were up. I think I talked briefly about that at the last committee of the whole, but at the pool and climbing wall, walking track rather, numbers have been up in all 3 areas. The one thing we did do a little different this year is we kept our public lessons during the morning hours in the summer, and we hosted private lessons in the afternoon, and it seemed to be a very good fit for all those that participated, and we sold out our private lessons in every session, so the timing seemed to be worked out very well. I think there was a question at our last committee meeting regarding the free swim and how our expenses increased as a result of those free swims during the summer months. Had a look and talked to our pool supervisor and manager. We don't really schedule any differently in terms of our staff for those summers. We have the appropriate number of staff out to support the numbers of people that are coming to the pool. However, where we see, and really only a slight increase, is really our chemicals. Or if we have a pool fouling or something where we have to close the pool and we have a staff member that comes in. But when I looked at the budget, really the increase in our expenses was $3,000 to $5,000 during the summer free swim, so not terrible by any stretch. I believe I talked about our lifeguard apprentice aquatic program. It's going fairly well. We do have 6 students still in the program, and we're actually going to advertise in December, and I don't think I have the date here, but advertise for some casual lifeguards, and we're hoping that one or several of those individuals will be able to pick up some hours for us and certainly help us in supporting all our programs at the swimming pool. A couple of dates coming up. That's past. A couple dates. December 1 is our skate with Santa, and December 22nd is a free skate sponsored by council. So I'll leave it at that today. You have further details in my report. Thanks again for your welcome.
Great job. Welcome again. Council, questions? Councillor Earl and Councillor Luxon?
No, he can go first.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Just a couple of quick, first of all, a point. I note that we have crested 1.2 million swimmers through the Kenmore Aquatic Center. A pretty incredible number for a community in a region our size. I think it speaks to the quality of the swimming pool, people's willingness to go and take part down there. A question I had, it's not in your report. Last year, during budget discussions, we made some significant changes to the parks budgets. And just curious whether you've noticed, is there anything there as you look towards coming for next year? Is there things we looked and took on or took out that you go, geez, maybe we should rethink this one? Or overall, from my perspective, when I look at it, I thought they were handled very well this year. But, I mean, you're the guy that would know that far better than I. I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on that.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, through your worship. I mean, we pulled it off. Kudos to our guys that are working in the field. There was some resistance and certainly some pushback that, you know, how are we ever going to go and do this? There were some stressful days earlier on. We had some really wet weather. The grass started growing crazy. So it wasn't without some concerns or complaints from the general public. I would say, you know, we pulled it off. We have to think a little bit differently, i.e., council said, you know, we're cutting the budget by this amount, so we took that 50%, we'll take that number, and we cut our flower boxes in half, our mowing in half, but we didn't exercise any discretion in terms of, say, and I'll use mowing as an example. We just stopped cutting everything. If we cut it every week, we cut it 2 weeks, or if we cut it once a month, we cut it 2 months. When in reality, there's a little discretion to say NAR as an example, premier facility, everybody sees it, big deal for the tourists. We should probably think about doing that perhaps a little more often, and perhaps a park on the perimeters that's not being used as a sports field, doing that a little less often. So conversations with the staff, you know, there was some struggle with just suggesting different means of going at things. I think, again, there was some pushback because, you know, well, we simply can't do this, when in fact they proved that we could do it. So I think, you know, going forward, we'll continue. I think over the winter we'll really talk about our timelines and our schedules and working with, you know, with the sport field users and those sorts of things. So I think, you know, it wasn't without its challenges, but
Good job.
we got through it.
You did a good job.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ross. Anything further? Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
job. And General Manager of Development Services, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I won't be nearly as long as Ross. Spirit of giving him a hard time.
You just jinxed yourself.
I know. Couple things to touch on. I noted in the report on the railway grade crossing, because I know that's council's probably wondering where that's at. So we've received the draft report. We've reviewed it. We've sent it back. We're just waiting for the final report. Peter tells me we're hoping to have that at the next council meeting. So hopefully we'll have that wrapped up and in front of council. Capital projects, as you can imagine, are all pretty much wrapped up, or as much as they're going to be, due to the onset of winter that we did have 2 weeks ago, and you wouldn't know it today, but so just about all the projects are substantially complete. Just the only one is 112th that's not, and we're working with the contractor on that. That will be completed in the spring. Cannabis, council had asked for a bit of a review 1 year later, you know, kind of from the legalization of cannabis. So I've had my staff kind of provide some information, some background, kind of what we've seen, where we're at. Some interesting, you know, realizations, I guess, is we've got a number of applications. I think we've got three outlets that are open, a couple more that are close to opening. You know, we continue to get some inquiries on that front. Really haven't had, I don't think we've had any bylaw issues whatsoever. Talking with my staff, they honestly do not recall maybe more than 1 or 2 calls in a year, and they were minor in nature, you know, regarding cannabis. So that has been a positive for sure, because when we went into this, we weren't sure what that was going to look like. So that spurred a bit of the discussion around the fees for cannabis, and you'll see that in the report. Is there's some discussion around really where the administrative work is, and we really anticipated it being on the back end, and maybe some problems with the outlets or, you know, the use, and that's been a non-issue. And what we're finding actually is there's more work on the front end, the administrative side of going through the application process. So staff are considering and thinking about bringing something forward that may change that, and obviously look for any discussion from council on that. Right now we have a very low application fee of $100, and we're not recovering those costs. Staff's looked at it and feel we're probably in the neighborhood of about $700 of cost on the front end. And if they go through to a business license and get a business license, then that's all fine, because then we do see that money on the back end. But there are times that you know, individuals will apply and never get to the business license stage. So just something for council to consider. There's a possibility that we could spend some time on the front end and never recoup any of those costs. And then there would be, of course, if we were to make some changes, you know, looking at just making sure that we're fair with the existing outlets that are in place and whatnot. So there'd be some things to look at. What was the other things? A couple other things that we're closing in on. Flood mitigation. So Chelsea's been working closely with our consultants on the next flood mapping update. And so we're going to be at a point where probably in late January, early February, where we're going to have the ability to run some scenarios with the updated flood mapping. And what we're hoping to do with that is then take a look at some specifics, such as 102nd Avenue, and just being able to run scenarios and see what that would look like with the updated flood mapping, and whether a different crossing would result in any different impacts. So we're hoping that we have something early in the new year that we can provide or shed some light on and what that might look like. Interesting note here on source water protection is you'll see the water quality sampling for September, and just some of the issues that we do deal with in the watershed with the bacterial contaminants and whatnot that stem from all different sorts of activity in the watershed. So again, really speaks to our level 4 water treatment plant and our ability to take some of those issues that we encounter and turn out a very high quality, safe drinking water for the public. I think the last thing I wanted to touch on was our snow that we had here a couple weeks ago. Just as we changed things up a little bit on just how we approached it. We had a significant snowfall, 25 to 30 centimeters in that short period of time. And our current policy says that if we do not feel that we can get everything cleaned up in a reasonable amount of time, 5 or 6 days, that we would enlist help with extra contractors. So we kind of approached it with a slightly different angle, and we rented an extra grader and an extra loader and utilized some of our internal staff, such as mechanics, and put them on some equipment, changed out some shifts a little bit, and we were able to get through everything, including a downtown removal, within a week's time. So it went really well. The benefit of that is we saved some money in the process. Whenever we hired additional equipment, such as graders and loaders, what we found is it usually ran about $20,000 to $25,000 a day for that hired equipment. And usually we had them 2 to 3 days, depending on the event. So $50,000 to $75,000 was pretty typical for a good event. So we didn't spend that this time. we did rent some equipment, but that equipment costs are considerably less. And, you know, for a loader and a grader combined is about $20,000 for the month. So that enables us obviously to use it multiple times within that. And of course, we'd have a few extra labor costs to run that equipment. But just as an example, each time we have an event, Dawn at Public Works tracks everything. We have all our expenses, our hours, and we, you know, she spits me out a report that says this event cost us X amount of dollars. So we know, you know, what that looks like. So for the event that we had during November 9th through to, we finalized on the 14th. Snow plowing was $57,000. So that's separate to downtown removal, but that's snow plowing the community. $57,000. Snow removal in the downtown, so this includes our equipment plus hired trucks, was $54,000. And sidewalk removal along 8th Street in Alaska was $10,000. So that event, you know, that's $121, $125,000 touch. So just to give some perspective on when we get an event like that, but saying that, we saved money by not hiring contractors, and I believe we did a superior job with less risk of damage to properties. So I think it was successful. So with that, any questions?
Thanks, Kevin. Councillor Earl, Councillor Parslow.
Just to follow up with respect to the sidewalk clearing on 8th and Alaska, I couldn't help but notice some pictures started popping up on Facebook and myself when I was walking down the street that I know when we met with the Ministry of Highways and Transportation earlier this year, we'd mentioned now that they had a new contractor coming on board, we want to collaborate on how we can avoid the issue of they plow, then we plow back onto theirs, or vice versa, as you know, we're wasting effort and manpower. Following this event, if you had any opportunity to reach out to, is it Argo?
Argo, yeah.
Argo Road Maintenance, and just touch base on how we can maybe avoid that next time.
So I did reach out to them right away because they did fill our sidewalks up. Reached out and had that discussion and indicated that we'd hoped that we'd have a slightly different outcome. I think the challenge for them was that maybe they didn't realize what challenges they had being new and what it would look like. So moving forward, try to be a little bit more coordinated, but the result, what I'm hearing from them is at the end of the day, they have a responsibility to remove the snow gutter to gutter. And they have nowhere else to put it. So they're likely going to put it there. They did assist with traffic control when we did the removal, but at the end of the day, that $10,000 cost is still ours to bear. That included our graders, our snow blower, and hired trucks. So that's kind of where that is. Right now, I don't think there is an opportunity or a willingness to put it somewhere else. They're just really limited options. So I think in the short term, they're going to continue to, when it warms up and they have to peel the compact off, it's going to end up on our sidewalks.
So, yeah. We engaged with the Ministry of Transportation and Highways when they were talking about the new agreement, the new contract. We attended that meeting in Port St. John, and I raised the issue with the ministry and said, you got to take this into account. It's a game now. Whoever touches it last gets the snow, and they push it on our sidewalk, we push it on the highway. And so it ultimately ends up with us spending $10,000 clearing it up. And so at this event, now the Argo are in the position of, so I think we need to now reach out to the Ministry of Transportation, and even the coordination of the clearing. If we could get them to say, okay, we're coming to Peel on Friday night, Thursday night, whatever night, even if they would peel it to the center so we could bring our snowblower in and do it then, it would make it much more efficient, much quicker, much faster. Because it's either that or we build a wall, and we build a wall along the sidewalk, and say, you have no place to put the snow. Yeah. Councillor Lexton?
Just following through two things on that. We not only met with Ministry of Transportation on the issue, but we met with Argo, the new contractor, and raised this very issue, who said they would work with us on this. So it's a little discouraging to hear maybe now that, gee, they've worked with us. It sounds a lot like Northern Health working with us on Rotary Lake is what I'm taking that as.
Yeah, no, they phoned us.
They phoned us, but there's got to be something. They're pushing it onto our sidewalk. That's our sidewalk. The public expects the sidewalk to be open. We're trying to make it easy. There's got to be a willingness of Argo to come to the table and work on this with us, I would think. Or we'll come up with an alternative that probably costs them more.
And I think, honestly, I think we got to get to the local highways folks, and we've talked to, and it's a highways issue in my view now. It's their highway. They're instructing these guys to clear that road, and they put conditions on it, and they're throwing it onto our sidewalk, and now we're the ones left to deal with it.
So would it not be an obligation that maybe we just send them the $10,000 bill then? I'd give that a try. I mean, I can't go push my snow into my neighbor's driveway and say, here, you plow it. Yet there seems to be a understanding they can fill our sidewalks in, which I don't think is appropriate. So. Yeah, I know it's not you, Kev, I get that.
Can I be there when you drop off the invoice, Kev?
I told you, you jinxed yourself.
So I think first step, and Kevin and Duncan and I talked about it, we'll reach out to Katie, the acting district manager, and say, look, we've talked about it now to you guys, we talked about it with the contractor, and now it's still ultimately our residents that are paying the money.
And we're happy to send a bill.
Councillor Parslow?
Just change of topic, maybe change of tone, change of engagement. I'd like to raise the issue of bylaw enforcement.
Sure.
Remember, we each got a email from a gentleman that featured a logging truck. I know you reported that you had engaged with the person. I'm just wondering, are there any outstanding issues or matters relating to that pretty wide sweeping, I'm going to say, input we got from...
Yeah, no, so I got a call from the resident, or we all did, we got the email, and I followed up with the individual and had a really good conversation about a number of the issues, and parking a heavy commercial vehicle in the neighborhood and all of that stuff, and so we dealt with that and dealt with the individual, and it's not happening anymore, and had a really good conversation with him about some of the other components that he was concerned with, and I was happy that I returned his call and happy we had the discussion.
So it's all been taken care of?
Well, I left it at, if he had any other issues or concerns, I was happy to deal with them, and he was happy that we responded and happy that we dealt with the concerns that he had. And so he didn't express any aspect to it that he wanted me to do, or on behalf of council to bring anything back further from that.
So that's great. So is our bylaw going to be proactive on those matters, or are we going to wait for another email on topics like that before we take action?
So through your worship, that's captured within council's bylaw, and so if council would like to change that, then you need to take a look at that bylaw.
Good answer.
Blair?
Just two other quick things. The CN crossing report you said is being worked on. The other one, we met with CN while we were at the UBCM, and they expressed that they would get back to us based on scheduling. We thought that, I certainly raised the issue on behalf of the residents. Scheduling was an issue, trains going at 1:30 in the morning or 3:20 and the horn going. They indicated they would look at that and get back to us. Have we heard anything yet? And if not, can we pursue that with CN again? It's been 2 months plus now, so.
I haven't heard anything myself.
Yeah, so through your worship, my expectation was I'd given them my card and I would hear something, and I haven't heard anything. Now, I do know the gentleman was going to be off for a while, and he'd hoped to get it done before he went off, but we can...
Could we just follow through and see if they've got anything? That may very well meet certainly the noise issue, I think, for the residents of the community. If you're not blasting the horn at 1:30 in the morning would be a benefit. So, and then the last one, I note on the loaders. We've got the new loaders, Kev. In the past, we trade these in. Have we ever tried to sell them outright? I'm just curious with our equipment pool. So we trade in the used equipment, which traditionally I always maybe rightfully or wrongfully believe if you could sell it outright, you might get a better deal on a cash deal purchasing something new. Have we pursued that with our equipment?
Yeah, in the past we have, if I remember correctly. Like often we'll when we go through the tendering process, we offer it up for trade because then you have your outcome, you know what the number is. And often they like to take it from us because they know it's well looked after and it's maintained and all that. It's been a while since we've sold something like a loader in an auction, an open auction, that I can recall. And a lot of the stuff that we sell now is going on Gov Deals. It's on a website. That's where we don't even have an open auction anymore. And we sell some, and we've had some success. I mean, you're at the whim of an auction. I mean, sometimes you get a good price and sometimes you don't. So it's just an uncertainty.
Okay, so we're using the right option then.
Yeah.
Just, I was curious what we've done.
It's not that we couldn't, it's just,
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Anything further for Kevin? One thing I would just like to, I stumbled upon it and was discussing with Kevin and Duncan about the new water meters that we've been installing over the project that we've been installing new water meters that are electronic, and so now we can read them and you get a daily count. So I saw one of the reports that's now available for us, for our staff to use when we have issues around concerns around water, or is it accurate, or so we'll maybe print for the next committee of the whole meeting a copy of the report so council can see it. It's unbelievable how good it is in terms of a resident saying, well, wait a minute, why is my bill so high because I was away for this period of time. You can actually see if there was any water consumption in that period of time. It's amazingly accurate and it's daily. So it's a really, really worthwhile, in my view, tool that we now have. And in the long run, helps us be more efficient in how we're reading meters and all of that stuff. And the service to our residents is just very well done. So I really appreciate that, and I think it's worthwhile for council to maybe see that, because I think we spend a lot of money in that water meter replacement. A couple $100,000 a year we were spending.
Yeah, we're spending about I think it's $250,000 a year.
Yeah.
And we've got about 2 years left to finish it out.
Really good job. Councillor Javekoff, you had a question?
I was just wondering how close we are to being complete.
Yeah. Good. Thanks, Kevin.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And 14.6, we have a report from our airport manager. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council, for providing me my birthday lunch today.
Oh, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that
the big steak today.
We had the
the
cake.
Blue Bombers won yesterday. Winnipeg Blue Bombers, of course. So I submitted my report. I just want to highlight 5 things from it. The infrastructure drainage project that we received ACAP funding for is now running currently about 2 weeks late, but they're hard at work and they've encountered one problem so far, but they have an engineered solution to it. It'll be a change order and some extra money, but I believe it'll be, I don't have that figure in front of me, but I believe that'll still be all ACAP eligible. So our de-icing situation in the vehicle. So we have had troubles keeping our de-icing machine operating. In fact, it's operated once. So, but we have, as of Friday evening, we have rented a different de-ice machine. Our staff are training on that today, and there's no more NOTAM left, so notice to airmen about de-icing services in Dawson Creek. I'm happy to say that we have that. I can tell you that there's only been one time that a scheduled airline did not fly into Dawson Creek because of our lack of de-icing. Also, there's been one time recently, last week, on Monday the 18th of November, CMA agent told our security guard they weren't flying into Dawson Creek due to a mechanical issue. So something wrong with their aircraft, and they went to Fort St. John instead, where it was easier for them to get that issue resolved. But it had nothing to do with de-icing. I have some medevac numbers that I highlighted in the report. So in the fiscal year for BC EHS, their fiscal year is April 1st to March 31st. So in their 2018 fiscal year, there was 187 patients that flew into or out of the Dawson Creek Regional Airport. And it's even gone up this year. So the numbers from January 1st of 2019 just till October 31st, there's been 225 individuals, patients flown into or out. But it looks like we're averaging close to one a day medevac at the airport. I have some stats. If you look at the stats, I provided some confusion last month when I was here. The local, scheduled, and itinerant movements at the top box of the stats, is extremely accurate. That comes from the Flight Service Station and Nav Canada. When you're reading those, the scheduled do include the CMA and the charters. Mostly the 3 aircraft. There's 3 ARC in Canada and Penastar that charter in and out. The itinerant movements, those are things like medevacs, helicopters, or aircraft that come here to buy fuel, or because Fort St. John is fogged in. As you can see, as of the end of October, we are $2,100 aircraft, or $2,100 aircraft movements above last year's to 2018's total. So that's very good. The passenger statistics in the bottom box, that still remains. We actually have more passengers than what's shown there because 2 of the 3 charter companies are not reporting their statistics to us currently, but we're working on that. And those are the highlights for the last month. If you have any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Councilor Earl?
Just a question around, and I don't know if this is a little too inside baseball, but I know when I worked at the event center and we'd host an event, we would track what was called per caps, which was the amount on average a person would spend on merchandise or other ancillaries like food and beverage, just to kind of gauge, it's this kind of show that per caps are going to be this. It was a very useful budgeting tool in forecasting. So when we have aircraft movements into the airport, do you guys develop any kind of per cap as, the average flight, if you were to divide it by 5,000, whatever, that equals this amount for fuel, this amount for de-icing services, this amount for whatever? Is that the kind of stuff you develop, or is it?
We can, and they do at larger airports because they want to know, they want to track how much the passengers and the meters and greeters are spending time in their terminal. Unfortunately, the only money that the passengers and the meters and greeters can spend at our terminal is in the restaurant. So, but we do track passengers per aircraft movement. So right now, basically, we're at about 4.4 passengers per the aircraft movements that are scheduled, the passenger carrying movements. Like I say, that number is low. It's an educated guess right now because I have 2 charter companies that I don't have the statistics for, but we're probably closer to 8, and that would make more sense because every day when I'm there, Central Mountain brings an average of 8 or 9 people in. And
so I'll jump in too to say that many of the services or some of the services we're offering now, we haven't in the past. So de-icing in particular, we don't have a lot of data on the previous de-icing other than the fluid that we're removing. And so as we move forward, we're going to be able to track that a little better as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of stuff when or fuel sales, if the average flight buys a couple $100 worth of fuel, just lets us know how when we see a 2,100 flight difference, that's going to have a positive impact or whatever. Anyway.
Sure, and just again to build off of that, it depends where that increase is coming as well, right? If it's coming through that local or those smaller aircraft, obviously you're not going to see it like a scheduled flight. And I mean, we have some work to do on the fuel component and what that looks like moving forward. We have some work to do on the fees as well. So you're going to see all of that here in the next couple months as Winnipeg has got in here and kind of understood the business a little better.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. One more thing with the fuel though too.
yes.
Currently we're tracking, so we're selling most of our fuel to helicopter operators and the private pilots that use our airport. Most of the scheduled services that come, or the airline scheduled service and the 3 charter companies, they have contracts to get their fuel at certain places, and we're working with them to try to get
in that mix.
To get that contract, yes, so we can sell more fuel. Cool.
Nice.
Great. Thank you.
Councillor Chevekov?
What was the cause of the add-on to the cost of the project for the drainage?
I can jump in on that one, Rick.
Sure.
Yeah, so through your worship, just recently, and I mean, we're still working on the fix right now. There's a supply and maybe a return, or there's a couple pipes anyway from the reclaim facility in a roadway, and they're going to be in the middle of where that culvert comes through. And so we're going to have to reroute it over. We've talked to ACAP. It is an eligible expense. We have contingency built within the project. I won't start saying our budget numbers or our contingency numbers in an open meeting, but it should be a relatively quick fix. We should be able to reroute it over and continue on.
So those pipes weren't recorded, or?
The depths. So for whatever reason, those depths were not accurate. We had the depths of the other pipes, and we had done some preliminary work, but these 2 pipes, for whatever reason, aren't where they should be, as it looks like there was a trench and kind of conduit and some fiber went into it and a couple other things. And so we have some wiggle room. The road actually drops in that area. We have the ability to either put it over top or underneath, and we have some contingency. So it's really just hitting the weather window and moving forward. But I believe there's about 15 meters left or 20 meters of pipe left to lay before that project's completed.
So do you have a projected completion date, or?
The completion date I have right now is November 30th, but that's for the culvert part.
It depends on these pipes and how quick we can get them rerouted.
And that projection was before this problem was identified. Fortunately, the problem is at the very end of the culvert project. Along with that project is changing our runway designation and getting new signs. Now that can't be done till the spring, but the signs have been ordered, and when we get good weather in the spring, we'll paint our new numbers and put our new signs in. So that's all on track.
Doing well.
Unbelievable. I think the weather has been so cooperative, and to be able to get a $3 million project that we were just launching 2.5 months ago or 3 months ago, to have it completed in the next week or 2 is very, very good. And improve drainage, improve infrastructure, fully funded. Like, there's a whole bunch of local contractors. Good job. Anything further for Rick? The de-icing, for me, I've heard the de-icing issue from passengers, from different folks over the last month, that, that we need to, we're operating an airport, and it's like not having runway cleaning equipment. We need to get the de-icing fixed in the long term for our airport. One medevac a day is evident enough without our commercial transport traffic as well. Anything further for Rick? Thanks so much. Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
We enjoyed your cake. And with that, that concludes our Committee of the Whole on regular. So at this time, we'll recess to closed for a whole bunch of reasons.